Chapter 947. The first time Glory World Academy recruited students, those who came to register were all geniuses and monsters. Of course, there were also some elders of top sects, and even leaders of forces. In front of this group of people, an old man who was about to die announced his name. What was the meaning of this? Many people were stunned for a moment. Some people's eyes shone brightly, as if realizing something. Jiang Chun was also deep in thought. There must be a reason for announcing his name in front of so many people. Heavenly Chaos Dipper! Right at this moment, the gray-haired old man stared at the bald old man. After the two old fellows looked at each other, they suddenly grinned. At the same time, a peaked chief god in the crowd exclaimed, "Heavenly Chaos Dipper! The one who died in Eternal City 100,000 years ago?" The moment these words came out, exclamations immediately sounded one after another. The beings of Nine Heavens' divine world naturally knew about Eternal City. That was an important place to resist foreign invasions. And Nine Heavens' divine world would send people over to Eternal City every once in a while. 100,000 years ago, there was a person with mysterious origins who called himself Heavenly Dipper, nicknamed Chaos Dipper. At that time, this person's life was a complete mess. With peak chief god cultivation, he suppressed the godly king with his strength alone. That battle could be said to have alarmed the entire Nine Heavens. One had to know that the power of a godly king was not what ordinary people could contend against. Back then, the Light Chief God and others joined forces with 36 people, setting up layers of complete sets and ambushes before barely killing Jiang Chun. And back then, Heavenly Dipper went against the top with his strength alone, suppressing a peak godly king of the present generation. This combat strength could not be not feared. It was just a pity that back then, Eternal City was in a state of emergency. Heavenly Dipper resolutely set out for Eternal City. It was not until a long time later that news was sent back that he died in battle. But what people did not expect was that the Heavenly Dipper who died in battle back then was actually still alive and returned to Nine Heavens' divine world. It was just that many people were puzzled. What was going on with such a powerful and ferocious person back then with such a low cultivation and dried-up blood chi? There were also people who suspected that this old man was not that Heavenly Dipper. Back then, this old man fought a bloody battle in the foreign territory and was seriously injured and on the verge of death. "I was lucky enough to escape," Han Gang explained. "After sleeping for countless years in the foreign battlefield, he woke up not long ago and dragged his incomplete body back to the Nine Heavens' divine realm." Then, "Senior, what's your current situation?" someone asked, probing the depths of Chaos Aura. This was because these people would not believe him based on Huangong's words alone. The most important thing was that he returned from the foreign battlefield. There were people who suspected that Chaos Dipper might have some sort of relationship with the other side. Otherwise, how could someone who had clearly died in battle suddenly appear in the continent of the Nine Clouds? He was seriously injured and dragged on for nearly 100,000 years. Now, he only has a single breath left. As you can see, if I don't have enough cultivation resources, I will die. But how can we prove that you're a Chaos Celestial? A peak overgod asked. That's right. The relationship between the 6 realms and the other side can be said to be undying and imperishable. You have also returned from the other side's battlefield, so we must treat you seriously. In the face of everyone's questions and doubts, Hong Kong bitterly smiled. Indeed, there was no way to prove himself. It was because the people who fought with him back then were all dead, and his own life-bound artifact was also destroyed in the battle. Now, all that was left of him was this half-dead body. I believe you. Right at this moment, Jiang Chun suddenly spoke. He stared at Hong Kong and said seriously, "Senior, if you don't mind, you can come to the West Hall." "Jiang Chun! This matter is very important, don't mess around," someone reprimanded angrily. "What if he's a spy sent by the other side?" "That's right. This kind of thing happened in the past. This person has to be investigated clearly." However, everyone present knew that it was too difficult to investigate Hunking's identity. There were no witnesses or material evidence. It would take a lot of time to investigate clearly. Without 30 to 50 years, or even thousands of years, one could forget about investigating Hunking's identity at all. Could Hong Kong afford to wait in his current state? Not to mention 30 to 50 years, he probably could not even wait 3 to 5 years. Sigh. At this moment, Hong Kong let out a long sigh. A trace of bitterness and loneliness flashed through his eyes, but more importantly, there was a kind of sadness. Once upon a time, he suppressed the Divine King and was hailed as the strongest master god in history. At that time, how glorious was he! Even when he left the Eternal Fortress and went to war on the other side, he was also glorious. But who would have thought that after returning, he would be suspected by everyone? Hunking's heart turned cold. The hot blood he had shed on the foreign battlefield seemed to have been wasted. He began to doubt whether it was right or wrong to protect the Nine Heavens' divine world. Has anyone present been to the Eternal Fortress? Have you fought with the creatures of the other side? Do you know the cruelty in the Eternal Fortress? Have you seen those old, weak women and children who have been fighting all their lives? White bones piled up into mountains. Some were younger than 10 years old, and some had their limbs broken. These people gave everything for the 6 realms, for the 9 heavens' divine world. You have never seen it, and you won't know that there is such a group of people in this world who are silently giving their all for you, never asking for anything in return. Jiang Chen's heart throbbed. He swept his gaze across everyone and said coldly, "Now that he has returned, your suspicions and guesses are naturally correct, but aren't you afraid of hurting people's hearts by doing this? Even if he is a spy sent by the other side, what does the 9 heavens' divine world have to fear? Why can't we trust him for once?" Facing Jiang Chen's words, everyone fell silent. After all, they knew about the existence of the Eternal Fortress, but they didn't know how cruel it was inside. Some people had been in the Eternal Fortress since the moment they were born. They didn't have much interest, only the responsibility of guarding the Eternal Fortress. Back when Jiang Chen was in the Eternal Fortress, he saw with his own eyes that those youths who were similar in age to him stepped into the battlefield. They were basically dead. Did those people deserve to die? No. They didn't deserve to die. They were only guarding the last line of defense of the 6 realms. Some people didn't even know why they had to protect the Eternal Fortress when they died in battle. At an ignorant age, they shouldered an unclear fate and responsibility. When they stepped onto the battlefield, they went without returning. Back then, if Jiang Chen hadn't been strong enough, he would have died in the battlefield of the other side. Everyone, I know what you are worried about. At this moment, the gray-haired old man spoke and said seriously, "This person is like the West Hall. If anything happens to him, I, the world's edge, will take responsibility. What if he is really a spy sent by the other side?" Someone asked. "He is alone. How can I, the world's edge, be afraid?" The gray-haired old man raised his eyebrows, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said, "You don't believe me?" As soon as these words came out, everyone immediately shut up. They could all see that the gray-haired old man's attitude was very clear and firm. He was going to protect the mixed-strength realm to the death. Chapter 948. The world's edge was a top force that had never declined since ancient times. Everyone was in awe of this force. Now, since the gray-haired old man who represented the world's edge had spoken, no one objected. However, many people still felt uncomfortable and fearful. After all, anything related to the foreign realm was not a small matter. Back then, it was because the 6 realms underestimated the foreign realm that the 5 realms were destroyed, leaving only the divine realm. Now, a person who returned from the foreign realm's battlefield, if they could not prove his identity, no one would be at ease. The world's edge is so impressive. You dared to take in a person of unknown origin. Do you really think that the world's edge is the one who calls the shots in this world? Suddenly, a voice filled with extreme hostility rang out. Everyone looked around, but they could not find the source of the voice. "Fellow cultivator, can you show yourself?" a peak lord asked with a nervous expression. It was because, as a peak lord, he could not find the owner of the voice. Moreover, this person was hostile. No one knew if he was targeting the world's edge or everyone present. Heh, little rat! The gray-haired old man had a look of contempt as he stared at a certain spot in the void. He had long sensed that creature. However, the gray-haired old man did not make a move. This made everyone very puzzled. The gray-haired old man was obviously the strongest person present. Moreover, this was Tsang's state, the territory of the world's edge. He had the strength and confidence to make a move. However, he did not do so. This made everyone puzzled. Some people were even shocked. Could it be that the gray-haired old man was afraid of the person who spoke in secret? Was the gray-haired old man weaker than the other party, or was the world's edge weaker than the other party's force? If it was the former, everyone could understand why the gray-haired old man did not make a move. What if it was the latter? Was there really a force in this world that could compete with the world's edge? This person is not simple. If the world's edge does not investigate his background, it will be difficult to convince the public. In the void, the living being spoke once more. As soon as he finished speaking, he walked out of the void. He was shrouded in a gray mist with great Tao runes floating on it. His appearance could not be seen clearly. However, one thing was certain. He was not afraid of the gray-haired old man, and he was not afraid of the world's edge. Otherwise, he would not dare to come out. Peak Divine King! This aura. I'm afraid it's not weaker than the gray-haired old man at the edge of the world, right? Everyone was shocked. Even Jiang Chen's eyelids twitched. This was because he had sensed that the man's divine sense had brushed past his body at a certain moment. Were they targeting him? You came out of the world's edge in advance, but you have seized the opportunity. But in the future, the situation of the divine realm of the 9 heavens will not be decided by you. Then, he directly pointed at Jiang Chen and said, "What's the meaning of leaving this person alive?" As soon as these words were spoken, the group of people was dumbfounded. What was going on? Can't Jiang Chen stay? Jiang Chen was also dumbfounded. He thought to himself, what does this creature mean? There was a hidden meaning in his words. It's not up to you to tell me what to do in the world's edge, the gray-haired old man said coldly. His face was filled with killing intent. However, he did not make a move in the end. He pointed at the distance, his eyelids drooping slightly. He looked very calm and said, "Go back to where you came from. Head the world's edge." The creature shrouded in the gray fog snorted with contempt and said, "You are really stupid to place your hopes on the younger generation. The grass will turn yellow, the flowers will wither. The younger generation is like tender grass and new flowers. If they bloom, they can block the frost," the gray-haired old man said. Buzz. As soon as he finished speaking, a tremor suddenly came from the depths of the Tsang state. Then, everyone saw a stalwart man appear in the sky. He did not come over, but a pair of purple eyes were like the sun, watching over here. At the same time, everyone could clearly feel that the gray fog shook, as if it was very afraid of that man. The gray-haired old man bowed respectfully to the man in the air and said softly, "Lord." "Lord? That man. Could he be the master of the world's edge?" Hiss. What a terrifying feeling! He stood there alone, as if he was holding up the entire sky. Zi Shao. He is still the same. At this moment, when the elders of the Poison God Hall and the descendants of the Clear Sky God Emperor saw that man, they did not hide the fear in their eyes. Others might not know that man's identity, but the two of them knew it very well. This man was the master of the world's edge, Zi Shao. This time, the main reason why the two God Emperors helped the world's edge establish an academy was because of Zi Shao. Even the descendants of the two God Emperors knew that the reason why they helped the academy was because the two God Emperors did not dare to provoke Zi Shao. Not only were they afraid, but they were also terrified. He is holding up an entire force by himself. He is immortal. Just what level has his cultivation reached? The elders of the Poison God Hall and the descendants of the Clear Sky God Emperor were shocked. They kept looking at Zi Shao, wanting to see clearly and understand. However, someone like Zi Xiao was surrounded by the Great Tao, and even the Great Tao could not get close to him. How could an ordinary person see through such a person? You are a guest. At this moment, Zi Xiao's voice sounded. There was not a trace of emotion in it, and it was ethereal. However, when the living being in the gray fog heard these words, his body trembled slightly, and he immediately escaped into the void. Since you are here, why don't you stay for a while longer? Zi Xiao asked. With a wave of his hand, a purple seal rushed into the void. In an instant, the void shattered, and the purple talisman turned into a palm that captured the man in the gray mist. Zi Xiao! Don't you dare do anything rash! The man in the gray fog was terrified. He could not remain calm, and even his tone of voice changed. He knew how terrifying Zi Xiao was, so he did not dare to struggle. Since ancient times, the world's edge has always won people over with virtue, Zi Xiao said softly. Zi Xiao said softly. His purple eyes stared at the living being in the gray fog. He said, However, there are times when virtue is not enough to convince others, so there must be blood. Zi Xiao! You are not the strongest in this world. The living being in the gray fog was completely flustered. He could feel the murderous intent in Zi Xiao's heart. So what if I'm not the strongest? How many people are stronger than me? Zi Xiao said softly. Do they dare to make a move? After saying that, Zi Xiao slowly raised his palm. A purple light appeared like an ocean and slowly fell toward the living being in the gray fog. Zi Xiao, you are the master of the world's edge. Is it necessary to attack a small fry? Suddenly, an invisible pressure appeared and scattered the light in Zi Xiao's hand. At the same time, a slightly frivolous voice sounded in this place. Chapter 949. The formless pressure dispersed the light from Zi Xiao's palm. That frivolous voice had a demonic quality to it that was captivating. Everyone was shocked. Another supreme expert had appeared. Moreover, this person seemed to be fearless of Zi Xiao and dared to attack him openly. However, everyone could see that the two sides had no intention of fighting. Otherwise, the invisible pressure would not have been as simple as scattering the light in Zi Xiao's palm. I have to watch my own child carefully. It's not good to cause trouble outside, Zi Xiao said softly and threw the Peak Divine King out as if he was throwing trash. This was truly hard to imagine. A dignified Peak Divine King level living being was like an ant in front of Zi Xiao. Everyone was guessing what level Zi Xiao's cultivation had reached. Could it be that he had surpassed an Emperor God? Or even a higher level? Everyone, Glory World Academy doesn't want you, but Linlang Academy welcomes you. At that moment, the frivolous voice sounded again. 3 days later, Linlang Academy will open in the extreme state. If you are interested, you can come to Linlang Academy. Linlang Academy is not afraid of anyone who comes. After saying that, the Peak Divine King escaped into the void, and the person who spoke in the dark did not speak anymore. Obviously, both of them had left. Zi Xiao did not attack, as if he was afraid. Who is that person? He can actually make the master of Tianya afraid. Is there really an existence in this world that can compete with Tianya? Many people were shocked and guessed. The gray-haired elder was silent as his gaze fell on Zi Xiao. He seemed to be waiting for Zi Xiao to speak. However, Zi Xiao did not say a word and disappeared instantly. This made more people certain that Tianya was not the strongest. In this world, there were indeed forces that could compete with Tianya. Humph! If Glory World Academy doesn't accept us, there are plenty of places to go. That's right. Let's go to Linlang Academy first. Maybe it's not worse than here. Why are you pretending to be high profile? Such a big academy only accepts 40 people. Is your strength and foundation not enough? Those who didn't enter the Glory World Academy opened their mouths. Their voices were very unpleasant and carried a hint of mockery. Obviously, they had resentment in their hearts. The gray-haired old man didn't say much about it. He calmly treated it and dismissed the crowd. For a moment, the huge flourishing age academy seemed a little empty, and a strand of tense and oppressive aura filled the air. They've also come into being. The descendant of the clear sky god emperor said softly. He looked at the gray-haired elder and said in a deep voice, "Their lineage is the sworn enemy of the world's edge. Don't involve us in your matters. That faction is targeting your world's edge. It has nothing to do with us. I hope you can report this to Lord Zishao and not implicate others." The elder of the Poison God Hall had a grave expression, as if he was very afraid of that faction. When the gray-haired old man heard this, he nodded with a smile and said, "Everyone, don't worry. All of you are here to pass on the Tao and receive guidance. You won't be implicated in anything." With that, the gray-haired old man pointed at the central hall and said, "Cultivation methods, divine skills, and Tao skills are all in there. If you're interested, you can study and cultivate them." "Oh? Is the World's Edge's secret technique also here?" Tianzi's eyes flashed. Clearly, he was here for the secret technique of World's Edge. As long as you can comprehend it. The gray-haired old man nodded. Then, the gray-haired old man briefly introduced the Flourishing Age Academy and disappeared. My head hurts. This era is really chaotic. The descendant of the clear sky god emperor held his head and sighed. The elder of the Poison God Hall also sighed. He glanced at the descendant of the clear sky god emperor and asked, "Does the clear sky god emperor know about this?" "I don't think so. That faction has always been very mysterious, 100 times more mysterious than the World's Edge." The descendant of the clear sky god emperor shook his head and frowned. After thinking for a while, he said, "I don't know what the clear sky ancestor is thinking. Even now, he still hasn't come out. My ancestor is the same. He hasn't come out. I really don't know what he's thinking. The Flourishing Age is coming. If a few god emperors come out, they can also occupy a region and become kings and lords." The elder of the Poison God Hall muttered. At this moment, Jiang Chen's expression was calm, but his eyes were a little absent-minded. Just now, the peak divine king of the mysterious faction sent a strand of divine sense to him. In the strand of divine sense, there was a message, which was actually reminding him to leave this place quickly. Was this, out of good intentions? Or did it have other intentions? Jiang Chen couldn't tell and couldn't figure it out. After all, he knew nothing about that mysterious faction. All of you go to the Central Palace to take a look. If you can comprehend some divine skills, it will be excellent. Jiang Chen came back to his senses. His heart was in a mess. After saying this, he went back to the West Palace. Bai Fengyu and the others knew Jiang Chen well. Seeing him like this, they didn't disturb him and entered the Central Palace. Only Lu Ying didn't leave. He followed Jiang Chen into the West Palace. "What are you thinking about?" Lu Ying came in front of Jiang Chen and asked, "Are you thinking about that mysterious faction? Do you know anything about that faction?" Jiang Chen asked. Lu Ying shook his head and smiled bitterly. "You heard it just now. That faction is 100 times more mysterious than the World's Edge. There are no records of it in the ancient books. Although my ultimate shadow sect is well informed, we don't know anything about that faction. I feel that the people from that faction came here today because of me." Jiang Chen muttered, "It feels very strange. Of course it's for you." All of a sudden, Chaos Gang walked in. He staggered with unsteady steps, looking like he was about to collapse. His vitality was severely depleted. His soul was flickering like a candle in the wind, about to be extinguished at any time. Jiang Chen walked over and helped him to the side. He asked, "Senior, do you know that faction?" "The Pingtian clan," Han Gang said. "Their inheritance is probably even older than the World's Edge." "The Pingtian clan?" At that moment, Lu Ying cried out. She seemed to have heard of the Pingtian clan. "Is it the clan that used to be devouring heavens?" Lu Ying asked. "That's right." Han Gang nodded. During the eras of Yellow Extinction, Qing Extinction, and Sang Extinction, the deaths of the three heavens are closely related to the Pingtian clan. However, very few people know of their existence. Moreover, there are very few people in the clan. Counting from their ancestors until now, There might not even be 10 people in the entire clan, said Hun Gang. Really? There are less than 10 people in a clan? Jiangchun was stunned. Afterwards, he realized the crux of the matter and asked, Senior, you're saying that the deaths of the three heavens are related to the Pingtian clan. I don't know the specifics either. I only heard that if the Pingtian clan hadn't secretly interfered, the three heavens wouldn't have been destroyed. Han Gang said softly. He could not help but look at Jiangchun with his cloudy eyes. He said, I think I've seen you somewhere before. Chapter 950. Hun Gang suspected that he had seen Jiangchun before, but Jiangchun was not surprised at all. He had reincarnated several times, so it was normal for some old monsters to have seen him. What he was most concerned about now was not whether Hun Gang had seen him before, but the background of the Pingtian clan. A clan with less than 10 people dared to fight against the world's edge. How strong was this clan? He recalled what Zishao had said before. The Peak Divine King had been called a child, a junior. Now that he thought about it carefully, he did not say it casually, nor did he look down on the Pingtian clan. Perhaps, a Peak Divine King could only be considered a junior in the Pingtian clan. Then, how strong were their elders? He did not know anything else, but the unknown creature that had dispersed the light from Zizhao's palm should be able to fight against Zishao. Otherwise, if someone had come to his territory to behave atrociously, how could Zishao not take action? The Pingtian clan is very mysterious. I know very little about them. Hun Gang shook his head. Suddenly, his eyes focused and he said, I remember, there was someone in Eternal City who seemed to be from the Pingtian clan. He was called the Evil Dominator. The Evil Dominator? Jiangchun exclaimed softly. Wasn't the Evil Dominator that old monk? Before the old monk returned, he was amiable, but after he returned, he changed. His aura was both righteous and evil, and his way of doing things was mysterious and strange. He always gave people a feeling that he could not be trusted. However, one thing was certain. The Evil Dominator had the final say in Eternal City now. I remember now. The Evil Dominator was indeed from the Pingtian clan, but he seemed to have committed some crime and was banished. He was sent to Eternal City to atone for his crime. Hun Gang's memory slowly recovered, and he remembered the Evil Dominator. The Evil Dominator, he's a fierce person, Jiangchun said. The Pingtian clan is full of fierce people, Hun Gang said. However, he was also somewhat puzzled. He muttered, It's just, I don't know why the Pingtian clan and the World's Edge have never fought, even though they are sworn enemies. Sworn enemies, yet they have never fought? In their long history they have never fought even once? Jiangchun asked. That's right. I don't think there has been a battle. Han Kong nodded. Jiangchun was stunned. Since they were sworn enemies, how could they not start a war? Ordinary enemies would have already fought to the death. After a long period of time, one of them would definitely be destroyed. However, the Heavenly Edge and Heavenly Clan were indeed somewhat different. Even though they were sworn enemies, they never started a war. In fact, no one knew why these two forces had become sworn enemies. No one in the world knew where their enmity came from. However, this life is a little special, Jiangchun said solemnly. There's a powerful enemy beyond the heavens, and a creature of the netherworld has come into being. The Heavenly Edge and the Heavenly Clan are making a move at the same time. This era is far too chaotic. It's more than just chaos. Lu Ying's expression was solemn as he said, According to my absolute shadow sex intelligence, a huge problem also happened to the Divine Emperor clan. Otherwise, why would the God Emperor clan be threatened by the World's Edge? Do you really think that the World's Edge dares to start a war with the God Emperor clan? Did he really dare to threaten the God Emperor clan? If not for the God Emperor clan's own situation, the World's Edge wouldn't dare to do so. Hearing this, Jiangchun really had a headache. His thoughts were in a mess. He didn't know what was wrong with this world. Why did it suddenly become chaotic? There were powerful enemies outside, and there was war inside. All of this accompanied the arrival of this golden age. Could it be that the golden age this time would be different from the rest? Would it be 100 flowers blooming in the golden age and reaching the peak, or would it be sublimated under the glory of the heavens, but it would be short-lived and withered? All of this was too difficult to understand and guess. It's a long road. Let's wait and see. Jiangchen sighed. Although the current Jiangchen had the heart to care about these things, he was powerless to do it. What he could do was to cultivate well and return to the peak as soon as possible. Perhaps, when he recovered to the peak, he would have a place in this golden age. You all have your own cultivation methods, right? You don't need me to teach you about cultivation, do you? Jiangchen asked. I came here because, on the one hand, the Golden Age Academy's cultivation resources are indeed abundant. On the other hand, I'm naturally here for the foundation cultivation methods of the world's edge, Luing said directly. As for asking you to teach me cultivation, isn't that nonsense? I only need cultivation resources. You don't need to take care of anything else, Hun Gang said. He nodded at Jiangchen and said very sincerely, Thank you for before. What's there to thank? Jiangchen sighed softly. You fought for the world, and the world has a lot of guesses about you. It's extremely sad. What I did was just to give you justice to the best of my ability. When I recover to the peak, I'll help you if you're in trouble, Hun Gang said. With that, he left and stepped into the cultivation room. Afterward, Luing also left and went to the central palace to try to comprehend the foundation cultivation methods of the world's edge. Jiangchen didn't delay. He stepped into the cultivation room and began to cultivate. At the same time, on a mountain in the depths of the Tsung state, Zishao stood at the top of the mountain, facing the cliff. His gaze fell on the horizon. Purple light rose in his eyes, and a righteous aura rose and fell behind him. His posture was tall and straight, and his hair was neat. Behind him, the gray-haired old man stood quietly, as if waiting for Zishao to speak. After a long time, Zishao slowly raised his arm, extended a finger, and pointed at the distant horizon. He asked, What do you see? The gray-haired old man was stunned when he heard that. He said humbly, I'm slow-witted. You're not the only one who's slow-witted. Even I can't see clearly. Zishao sighed. The sky in front of us has long changed. The road ahead is filled with fog. Everything has become uncertain. The fork in the road of fate has arrived. Sir, can the ninth heaven divine world safely pass this time? The gray-haired old man asked. Safely pass? Zishao whispered. Then he sneered and said, When has it ever passed safely? When has it not been a mountain of bones and rivers of blood? And when has it not been a disaster for all living things in this world? There's no such thing as safely passing. There's only fighting. Speaking of this, Zishau's eyes flashed. There was a cold light and a murderous intent in his pupils. He slowly turned around, looked at the gray-haired old man, and asked in a serious voice, How are those old monsters now? Is there any movement? There's no movement for the time being, but judging by the time, they should be out. The gray-haired old man looked serious. He knew who the old monsters Zishao was talking about were. Those few living things were once invincible in the world. They were terrifying, but they couldn't escape the brilliance of time. This time, if they dare to attack again, then... Even if I die, I'll fight with them, Zishao said in a deep voice. They were once high and mighty and were praised by the world. Now they're the darkest. Chapter 951. Only by standing at the highest point could one see the darkness of the world clearly. In this world, there was too much fog and too much darkness. The light was gradually hidden in this flourishing age. The road ahead was long, but there was no trace of hope. Zishao straightened his hair crown. His body was full of noble spirit. When he opened and closed his eyes, it was as if the sun and moon were reversing. He really wanted to see the world clearly, but he helplessly found that the world was too complicated. No one knew better than him what had happened in this world. Just as he said, there was no such thing as safely passing through. All living beings were just fighting to pass through. Do we need to manage the Emperor God clan? The gray-haired old man asked. Those Emperor Gods have made great contributions to the 9 heavens divine realm. If they don't do anything out of line, let them be. Zishao sighed softly. When he said this, only Zishao himself knew how helpless and powerless he was. There were too many things he wanted to do, but how could he do it all by himself? The world did not know who the enemy they were facing was. They only knew that it was the experts of the great wide world and the creatures of the underworld. Little did they know that the real enemy came from the 9 heavens. I'm going out for a while. I'll leave the world's edge to you during this period of time. After a few breaths, Zishao left behind a sentence and disappeared on the spot. The gray-haired old man's expression froze, and his heart palpitated. It was because Zishao had not left the Tseng prefecture for several generations. Something big must have happened when he left this time. The gray-haired old man raised his head and looked at the sky. The sky was clear and untainted. However, in his eyes, the color of the sky changed. In the vast sky, there was a wisp of gray and black substance floating like a ghost. Upon closer inspection, it was more like an invisible palm, as if it wanted to cover the sky and deceive all living beings in the world. He looked at it for a long time, then shook his head gently and muttered, "Everything will end." Time passed slowly. A month had passed since the establishment of the Flourishing Age Academy. During this month, the Flourishing Age Academy was very peaceful. The 40 disciples were all cultivating. Occasionally, they would go to the central palace to comprehend some divine skills and Taoist skills. As for the foundation cultivation methods of the world's edge in the central palace, no one comprehended them. However, Qingjulu had managed to comprehend the cultivation technique that the Poison God Temple had brought over. The moment Qingjulu comprehended the secret techniques of the Poison God Temple, no one had expected him to announce to the world that he was leaving Proud Heaven Gate and joining the Poison God Temple. This caused many people to curse him for being ungrateful and betraying his sect. However, only a few people knew that Qingjulu had no choice but to do so. The Poison God Temple was the inheritance of the Poison God Emperor, and it was impossible for its secret cultivation techniques to be leaked to outsiders. Since Qingjulu had comprehended the Poison God Temple's secret cultivation method, he only had 2 choices. He could either die or join the Poison God Temple. He believed that many people would choose to live like Qingjulu. Moreover, the Golden Age was about to descend. Everyone could see that chaos was about to come from the Golden Age. Although Aolai Heavenly Sect had a deep foundation, it was still lacking compared to the Poison God Temple. It was reasonable for Qingjulu to choose the Poison God Temple. After all, Aolai Heavenly Sect had nurtured Qingjulu for so long, yet they had abandoned him. On this day, people from Proud Descent Heavenly Gate came. They wanted to bring Qingjulu back. However, this was easier said than done. I have never forgotten the sect's nurturing, but I have no other choice. Facing the group of experts from Proud Descent Heavenly Gate, Qingjulu spoke his mind in neither servile nor overbearing manner. As for the elder from the Poison God Temple, although he had a foul mouth and a bad attitude, he was very calm and did not get angry. He looked at the group of experts from Proud Descent Heavenly Gate and slowly explained. He comprehended the Poison God Emperor's secret cultivation method, so he naturally wants to join the Poison God Emperor's sect. This is a good thing for him, for all of you, and for the Poison God Temple, the elder said. If you value talent, don't make things difficult for him. He is a disciple of Proud Descent Heavenly Gate. Now that he has publicly announced to the world that he has abandoned his sect, what face will we have left? An elder from Proud Descent Heavenly Gate shouted angrily. Since we're here today, we must demand an explanation. Hearing this, the elder from the Poison God Temple's face turned gloomy. He looked at Qingjulu and said directly, Cripple your own cultivation, sever your memories, and forget the Poison God Temple's secret cultivation method. Then you can return to Proud Descent Heavenly Gate. What's the difference between that and death? Qingjulu stood straight. Now that things had come to this, he had to face it. Moreover, he had to face it calmly. Do you want to die? The elder from the Poison God Temple asked. No. Chinjulu shook his head. Chinjulu shook his head and kowtowed to the people from Aolai Heavenly Gate. His face was full of sincerity as he said, Chinjulu thanks Aolai Heavenly Gate for grooming me, but my path is my own. Impudent. Our proud descent Heavenly Gate nurtured you so that you can betray your sect? Cripple your own cultivation. Otherwise you will die. The group from proud descent Heavenly Gate was naturally unwilling to give up. In their eyes, face was more important than anything else. Why are you still kneeling to them? The elder from the Poison God Temple sneered. They want to kill you now. Without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. Chinjulu said. After kneeling and kowtowing, I will be free. You want to be free? In your dreams. Things aren't as simple as you think. Chinjulu's expression was calm in the face of the angry shouts from the group from proud descent Heavenly Gate. He slowly stood up and cupped his hands towards the elder. I have already made my stance clear. All right, leave the rest to me. The elder from the Poison God Temple smiled. He patted Chinjulu's shoulder and said, You didn't do anything wrong. No one did anything wrong. The mistake lies in the word face. After saying that, the elder from the Poison God Temple took a step forward. Poisonous mist rose from his body and a swamp appeared under his feet. He waved his hand and the poisonous mist fell like rain. White skeletal arms stretched out from the swamp. In an instant, the group of people from Aolai Heavenly Gate were imprisoned, and the poisonous fog rushed in front of them. Their lives were in the hands of the elder from the Poison God Temple. Since no one did anything wrong, why do you have to fight? Suddenly, the gray-haired elder appeared. With a flick of his finger, the poisonous mist and swamp dispersed. Then, he looked at the group from proud descent Heavenly Gate and said with contempt, Do you still care about face at this point? When the chaotic times begin, what does face mean? At that time, perhaps you will kneel and beg for mercy for a chance to live. Or perhaps, proud descent Heavenly Gate will be destroyed in the chaotic times. After saying that, the gray-haired elder sighed heavily and said, Go back. He is now a disciple of my Glory World Academy and the successor of the Poison God Temple. Chapter 952. In fact, all the major factions had thought of this when they sent their disciples to Flourishing Age Academy. However, none of them had thought about what would happen if their disciples really comprehended the cultivation techniques of other factions. Even Aolai Heavenly Sect had not expected this. Senior, he has cultivated our Aolai Heavenly Sect's cultivation technique, someone said. We can let him go, but we must destroy Aolai Heavenly Sect's cultivation technique and erase his memories. Chinjulu's expression turned ugly when he heard this. One had to know that his current cultivation came from Aolai Heavenly Sect's cultivation technique. If the cultivation technique was destroyed, his cultivation would be crippled. As for erasing his memories, it was not just a part of it, but all of it. After erasing his memories would be like a blank sheet of paper. He would even forget himself. Don't you understand what I'm saying? The gray-haired old man said softly. Why do you have to be so ruthless? If he leaks Aolai Heavenly Sect's cultivation technique and hands it over to the Poison God Temple, it won't be good for Aolai Heavenly Sect. That's right. Every faction's cultivation technique can't be leaked. Everyone knows this. Do you think the Poison God Temple will take a fancy to your cultivation technique? The Poison God Temple's elder said coldly. Since he has comprehended the Poison God Temple's secret cultivation method, he is our Poison God Temple's successor. Today, no matter what, we won't let you take him away. As for harming him in the slightest, all of you are dreaming. Even if the sect leader of Aolai Heavenly Sect comes, he won't be able to do it today. Clearly, the Poison God Temple's elder was furious. His attitude was unyielding. When the people of Aolai Heavenly Sect heard this, their expressions turned ugly. They fell silent, considering the pros and cons. Everyone, why do you have to be like this? The gray-haired old man sighed. The Flourishing Age Academy has arrived, and everything has become blurry. The road ahead is uncertain. Who can walk to the end and who will be defeated halfway is unknown. Now, don't destroy the peace of the divine world of the 9 firmaments over such a trivial matter. However, the people of Aeoli Heavenly Sect disagreed. Since the establishment of Aeoli Heavenly Sect, such a thing had never happened. Moreover, if the world's edge hadn't appeared, Aeoli Heavenly Sect wouldn't have feared the bloodline of the Divine Emperor. At the end of the day, the world's edge was the one controlling everything. "You must give us an explanation," said the leader of the group from Aeoli Heavenly Sect. His cultivation base wasn't very high, but his seniority was quite high. He was one of the patriarchs of the proud Heaven Gate. He hadn't spoken since the beginning, and only now did he speak. His words represented the final attitude of the proud Heavenly Sect. Then scram! At this moment, a cold light flashed in the gray-haired old man's eyes. With a wave of his hand, a cloud appeared. The clouds rolled like waves, sweeping the people from Aeoli Heavenly Sect into it. Then they were swept out of Tsang Prefecture. "Since he can't be reasoned with, then let's do it," the gray-haired old man said softly. "Sometimes it's much easier to make a move than to reason." "Thank you, Senior," Chinjulu said. "Why are you thanking me? You are a disciple of the Flourishing Age Academy." The gray-haired old man smiled and waved his hand to show that he did not care. However, the gray-haired old man also realized the seriousness of the matter. Of the 40 disciples, Chinjulu would not be the only one who would be able to comprehend the secret techniques of the major forces. At that time, if something like this happened again, would they have to deal with it like today? There was no harm in dealing with it once or twice. After all, the world's edge could suppress it. But what if it happened a few times? Tell those disciples that when they want to comprehend the secret techniques of the Flourishing Age Academy, they should first consider whether they can bear the consequences, the gray-haired old man said. "We should tell them about this," the Poison God Hall elder said with a nod. Buzz. Boom. At this moment, a rumbling sound came from afar. As far as the eye could see, there was actually a black cloud floating in the sky. Above the black cloud was a dazzling light. Below the black cloud, it was pitch black. The black cloud seemed to have separated the light from the darkness. "It's very far away," the Poison God Hall elder said in a low voice. "It's at least across several prefectures, but the sound can clearly be heard here. It's targeting the world's edge," the gray-haired old man said in a low voice. At the same time, the instructors and disciples of the Flourishing Age Academy walked out. This was because the sound was getting louder and louder. Moreover, a gloomy and cold aura covered the entire world's edge. This aura... Jiang Chen's expression froze, and he also walked out of the cultivation room. When he saw the black and white blending in the sky, his expression changed greatly. "It's here! The intersection of yin and yang! The creatures of the netherworld are here!" At this moment, not only the Flourishing Age Academy, but all the prefectures of the 9 heavens saw this scene. Black and white were distinct, and a gap seemed to have appeared between heaven and earth. Yin Qi gushed out like a wave. Yin and yang separated, and a bridge seemed to stretch out from the endless void between the two worlds. The netherworld! The rumors are true! There really is a netherworld! It's not just the netherworld, the creatures of the netherworld are coming! Everyone's heart palpitated, and some people even cried out, thinking that the world of the living would be invaded by the netherworld. A ray of light. It's so dark. Half a day later, many people saw a ray of black light bursting out from the intersection of yin and yang. It was like a black meteor, heading straight for the Tseng Prefecture. After a few more breaths, several more rays of black light rushed out from the intersection of yin and yang, and rushed to the prefectures of the 9 heavens. The creatures of the netherworld are here. The Golden Age has not yet begun, and the chaos has already arrived. The gray-haired old man sighed, and his pupils condensed as he walked to the front of everyone. Then, he waved his hand, and a barrier rose, protecting the group of people behind him. Boom! The next moment, a ray of black light fell, and the yin qi was violent, as if a piece of land from the netherworld had fallen in the Flourishing Age Academy. A young man, whose appearance was no different from the creatures of the world of the living, had flesh and blood, but the aura emitted from his body was extremely cold. After he came here, he grinned at the gray-haired old man, and after he waved his hand, a gilded decree appeared in front of everyone. "I'm here to pay a visit to Tianya under the order of my master," the young man said softly, and bowed to the gray-haired old man. "Why are you so polite?" The gray-haired old man frowned and said, "When yin and yang are opposite, even if there is no enmity between them, it is difficult to balance them." "Senior, you're right." The young man nodded, and his eyes flickered. He glanced at the group of people behind the gray-haired old man and said, "My master also said that after the creatures of the netherworld enter the world of the living, the first battle will be started by me." "What?" "He's here to start a war. To start a war with Tianya." At this moment, the eyelids of the disciples of the Flourishing Age Academy twitched, and they thought to themselves, what does the netherworld want to do? They want to start a war with Tianya as soon as they arrive? Chapter 953. It was obvious that the netherworld knew of Tianya's status in the nine heavens divine realm. As soon as they came to the world of the living, they went to find Tianya. But what puzzled everyone was the netherworld really that powerful? "My master can't enter the world of the living." This young man was very handsome with fair skin, but the yin energy on his body made people feel very uncomfortable. There was no enmity between them, but he gave everyone a feeling of disgust. Perhaps this was what the gray-haired old man said. Yin and yang were opposites. Even if there was no enmity between them, there would eventually be a conflict. The Golden Age has not truly arrived, and the power of yin and yang has not completely collapsed. Your master can't enter the world of the living for the time being. The gray-haired old man nodded. "Amir Jr. Do you want to die?" At this moment, the elder of the Poison God Temple shouted angrily. Poison fog lingered on his body, and a large number of runes scattered. Everyone could see that the cultivation of this young man from the netherworld was not high. He was only an upper god. Moreover, from his words, everyone knew that his master did not come. This meant that this young man from the netherworld had no backing. Since that was the case, what was there to be afraid of? However, the gray-haired old man waved his hand and shook his head. "In the end, there must be a rule. Otherwise, all living things in this world will be extinct. The creatures of the netherworld are bullying us. Why aren't you making a move?" The elder of the Poison God Temple said with an ugly expression. "I killed his disciple, so what? Bullying the weak, once this kind of thing is done, the consequences are very serious." The young man chuckled. "Since you can bully the weak, then you can use the power of cultivators to kill mortals. At that time, when the two sides fight, there won't be so many rules." As soon as the young man said this, the elder of the Poison God Temple's expression turned serious. The poison fog on his body dissipated, and the runes retreated. This was because the young man was right. The creatures in this world were not all cultivators. There were many mortals who had never cultivated, and the number of mortals far exceeded that of cultivators. Under normal circumstances, the battle between cultivators, even if the world was turned upside down, those mortals would not be implicated. This was because mortals were the root. Every cultivator was a mortal before they began to cultivate. If the mortals went extinct, the foundation of the cultivators would also be gone. It's only a matter of time before war breaks out between the mortal realm and the mortal realm. "But shouldn't there be some sort of rule?" the young man mocked. "If you don't follow the rules, then most of the living beings in both worlds will die." "All right. Tell me why you're here," the gray-haired old man said. "Senior, I came from the great Luyun of the netherworld. My surname is Fang Tai, and my name is Zhang Yuan. Today, I came here under the orders of my master to start the first battle." After saying that, Fang Tai Zhang Yuan's gaze swept past Jiang Chen and the others. Then, he frowned and muttered, "Is the world of the living so weak now?" As soon as these words came out, the faces of Jiang Chen and the others turned ugly. What was the meaning of this? Was this a group taunt? What? Are you questioning our strength? Tianzi was the first to stand out, his body emitting a sharp aura. His name was Tianzi, and he claimed to be the son of heaven. He was proud and arrogant. How could he endure such ridicule? Moreover, after Tianzi entered Xingshi Academy, his cultivation had increased greatly. Now, he was just one step away from entering the realm of titled God. He was originally proud and arrogant. Coupled with the increase in his strength, this made him even more confident and arrogant. Heh! Fa Tai Zhanyuan snorted lightly and retreated to an open space in the distance. Then, he waved at Tianzi and said with a look of contempt, "Come! This battle will be my first battle for the world of the living." Tianzi was very confident. His hair danced wildly as he rushed out. He was like a golden dragon. With a roar, he pushed his palm forward. Golden divine power was like a tide, instantly drowning Fa Tai Zhanyuan. Boom! Accompanied by a series of explosions, the golden divine power seemed to be burning, turning into a furnace. Kunlun Mountain's Thousand Sun Seal! Looks like Tianzi has obtained the true inheritance of Kunlun Mountain! Many people exclaimed. Thousand Sun Seal was a technique that Kunlun Mountain did not pass down. According to legend, when the Thousand Sun Seal was cultivated to the extreme, it could obtain the power of the sun and burn the world. Just this? Suddenly, an extremely contemptuous voice came from the furnace formed by the golden divine power. Bang! Immediately after, the furnace exploded, and Fa Tai Zhanyuan appeared in front of everyone without any injuries. On his body, black fog was rising, and white frost was floating under his feet. In the blink of an eye, strands of cold light shot out like willow branches, shattering the last strand of golden divine power. Then, without waiting for Tianzi to react, a snow-white long blade appeared in front of him out of thin air. The blade fell, and its speed was so fast that Tianzi did not even have time to react before his forehead was slashed. Pooh! After a muffled sound, everyone saw Tianzi retreating. His forehead was slashed open, and his soul and divine soul were exposed. He was almost killed by the blade. Too weak. Compared to my netherworld, the world of the living is really nothing. Fa Tai Zhanyuan mocked. Is there anyone else? When these words came out, Tianzi stood out once again. The injury between his brows had healed, and he said coldly, Again! You have already lost. Fa Tai Zhanyuan said softly, If I did not show mercy just now, you would be a corpse now. No, there might not even be a corpse left. Hearing this, Tianzi was instantly furious. Golden light bloomed from his body, and he formed seals with both hands, wanting to attack again. But at this moment, the descendant of the clear sky god emperor stopped him. He did not say anything and only shook his head. Tianzi's expression stiffened. He looked at the descendant of the clear sky god emperor in a daze, as if asking, Am I really not as good as him? Why is this guy even more arrogant than me? At this moment, Wakako could not stand it anymore. He stepped out and was about to attack. But he was stopped by Jiangqin. Because Jiangqin saw it very clearly, and could also feel Fa Tai Zhanyuan's strength. The blade that slashed at Tianzi just now was definitely not Fa Tai Zhanyuan's true strength. Xiao Qingyi, among these people, you are now the weakest, right? Jiangqin suddenly said and looked at Xiao Qingyi with a smile. Xiao Qingyi's old face turned red, and he was quite embarrassed. But he had to admit that the current him was indeed the weakest among Jiang Lu and the others. This was because after he became a god, he did not give up his original profession and had been cultivating the necromancy technique. His cultivation was very slow. Although his realm had increased, it was still difficult for him to use his divine power to control the necromancy technique. I'm going to practice, Jiangqin said. I'm going to hone myself. I'll treat him as a whetstone. What if I am killed? Xiao Qingyi's face darkened. Didn't you see that slash just now? It almost took Tianzi's life. Do you think he dares to kill people here? Or do you think the world's edge will let a disciple of the Glory World Academy die in his own academy? Jiangchen said softly. He patted Xiao Qingyi's shoulder and said, Go. Chapter 954. Xiao Qingyi was extremely unwilling. He knew he was no match for Fan Zhentian, yet he insisted on fighting. Wasn't he asking for a beating? However, since his boss had spoken, he couldn't refuse. Moreover, he knew that Jiangchen was doing this for his own good. Xiao Qingyi had no choice but to walk out. Don't you have anyone else? Fan Zhanyuan frowned and looked at Xiao Qingyi with disdain. With such cultivation, are you here to die? I'm using you as a whetstone, Jiangchen said directly. Do you dare to kill anyone here? Ha, using me as a whetstone? Fatai Zhanyuan chuckled. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Fine, I'll grind all of you here today. Wait. At this moment, Xiao Qingyi seemed a little flustered. He said directly, Can you let me attack first? When these words came out, the group of people was speechless. Many people looked at Jiangchen and thought to themselves, like boss, like underling. He's really thick-skinned. So what if I let you attack first? I'll suppress you with one move, Fantai Zhanyuan said. Okay. Xiao Qingyi nodded and formed a seal with his hands. After a few breaths, he pressed his palms on the ground. Boom! With a loud explosion, the ground shook. At the same time, black fog rose from the ground, accompanied by the cries of ghosts. Within the black fog, there were many figures, and there were even tattered war flags that were rising from the ground. Ancient bronze chariots, blood-stained battle flags, and rows of undead soldiers appeared out of thin air. Are these undead? This is a technique used before becoming a god, right? After becoming a god, these techniques are difficult to merge with divine power. They're useless. Fatai Zhanyuan was also stunned. He didn't expect that the young man in front of him was still using these ancient techniques. That's it. Fantai Zhanyuan pursed his lips and pushed his palm forward. The sharp blade light fell like a snow-white fog. Boom! Boom! A series of explosions immediately rang out. Wherever the saber light passed, the undead collapsed on the spot. Even the war flag and the chariot disappeared. However, after several breaths of time, even more departed spirits appeared. The war banners and war chariots recombined, ghost energy rushing into the heavens. Moreover, these undead were clearly different from before. The undead from before did not have any armor, and the aura it exuded was relatively weak. And now, every single undead was wearing ancient and tattered armor, with broken weapons in their hands. At the same time, the aura they emitted had also reached the level of super profound god. I still can't. Fantai Zhanyuan said softly and struck out with his palm again. Under the overlapping blade light, these undead were once again cleanly chopped. Puff! At this moment, Xiao Qingyi spat out a mouthful of blood. He seemed to have suffered a backlash from the annihilation of the undead. However, his hands didn't stop. They were still forming seals. At the same time, rumbling sounds came from his body, as if something had been opened. Netherworld Road! The gray-haired old man glanced at Xiao Qingyi, and his eyes flashed. He saw that there was actually a door in Xiao Qingyi's body. That door opened, and behind it was like hell. Wisps of pure and terrifying ghost energy came out from behind the door. Then, as Xiao Qingyi's hand seals formed, this side of the world dimmed. Puff! After several breaths of time, the ground shook, and a golden skeletal palm reached out from under the ground. At the same time, the aura of a lesser supreme god spread out. Before anyone could react, in just 3 breaths of time, hundreds of golden skeletons drilled out from under the ground. They were all wearing golden armor and holding silver long swords. Their cultivations were all lesser supreme gods. This kid walked on a different path. The gray-haired old man nodded to himself. He knew what kind of path Xiao Qingyi walked on. He did not cultivate divine power, but used his own body as a guide to communicate with the netherworld. He also used his own blood energy as a supplement to nurture the departed spirits. As long as he did not die and his blood energy did not dry up, the departed spirits would continue to grow stronger. At this moment, Fan Tai Zhanyuan also saw through Xiao Qingyi's intentions and directly attacked. He slashed down, shattering a large number of golden skeletons. Then, he charged in front of Xiao Qingyi and pressed his finger between Xiao Qingyi's eyebrows. "You've lost," Fa Tai Zhanyuan said coldly. He did not kill him. Just as Jiang Chen said, Fa Tai Zhanyuan did not dare to kill anyone here. "I've failed, but you're also afraid." Xiao Qingyi's body was surrounded by ghost energy. He said with a mocking tone, "When I form the third seal, you will face endless ghost generals. So I won't give you a third chance to form the seal," Fan Tai Zhanyuan said in a low voice. If he hadn't reacted quickly, the undead summoned by Xiao Qingyi's third hand seal would probably all be at the level of an upper-level god. At that time, how could he fight against the army of departed spirits alone? "Kid, not bad. You have potential," the gray-haired old man praised. The gray-haired old man exclaimed in admiration. "If you really want to walk this path, I have some ancient books in the world's edge that can help you cultivate." "Thank you, senior," Xiao Qingyi said respectfully. Then, he returned to Jiang Chen's side. "Boss, when he pressed his finger between my eyebrows, I really pissed my pants." Xiao Qingyi's face was dark. He said with some resentment, "I was almost beaten to death. Aren't you still alive?" Jiang Chen joked. Then Jiang Chen looked at Jiang Lu and said, "You go and try. Use my full strength?" Jiang Lu said honestly, "I'm afraid I'll cripple him." As soon as he said that, Fa Tai Zhanyuan was enraged. "What are you saying? You're afraid you'll cripple me? Stupid fatty. You have to be responsible for your words." Fa Tai Zhanyuan said coldly, "I'm telling the truth." Jiang Lu was still as honest as ever. He looked straight at Fa Tai Zhanyuan and said, "If I accidentally cripple you, you can't blame me." "What if I accidentally cripple you?" Fa Tai Zhanyuan raised his eyebrows and said, "As long as you don't die, it's fine." Jiang Chen grinned and said, "The premise is that you have to have the ability to do so." "Is that so?" "It seems that the people of the Yang realm are not only weak, but they also have this kind of confidence." Fa Tai Zhanyuan narrowed his eyes and stared at Jiang Chen. He said, "After I take care of him, I'll take care of you." "Anytime," Jiang Chen said softly. Then Jiang Lu walked out. His body was surrounded by golden light. His muscles and meridians were floating like a dragon. Behind him, an illusory figure appeared. It was like an ancient deity. The sound of chanting could be heard. Boom! In the next moment, Jiang Lu directly made his move. Without any fancy moves, he rushed towards Fa Tai Zhanyuan in big strides. "Do you only know how to use brute force?" Fa Tai Zhanyuan said contemptuously. With a wave of his hand, a snow-white blade appeared. Boom! However, when a loud explosion rang out, he was shocked to see that his attack had been shattered by Jiang Lu's bare hands. Chapter 955. Fa Tai Zhanyuan came from the netherworld and came to the world's edge to start the first battle between the two worlds. He was confident and arrogant, but he was not conceited. From the start of the battle until now, he had been using the same move. He could win with just a flash of his blade. Did he underestimate the cultivators of the Yang realm? No. It was because he did not dare to underestimate them that he kept using this move. This move was the secret art of his sect, and it was extremely powerful. But now, the flash of his blade was shattered by Jiang Chen with his bare hands. This made him shocked, and his expression became more serious. He also remembered what his master said to him before he came to the Yang realm. Don't underestimate the Yang realm. Interesting. Fa Tai Zhanyuan said softly. He stretched out his hand, and a 7-feet-long blade appeared. Lightning rolled on the blade, and a Taotia's shadow appeared. The roar of a ferocious beast blended with the sound of thunder, and the sound reverberated in all directions. Be careful, That's his doctrine soul, Jiangchen warned him. It's a killing blade, thunder. Who cares about thunder? I'll break it with brute force, Jianglu said softly. He rushed out, and his body was full of golden light. His divine power surged, and it was like a wave that slapped out from his body. When he punched out, although it was ordinary, it shattered the void. Tens of thousands of golden lights gathered, and the fist was like the sun. Still barehanded? This time, I'm afraid you won't be able to do it. Fantai Zhanyuan raised his eyebrows, and the thunder in his hand slashed out. Rolling lightning exploded, and the Taotia's shadow rushed out with a roar. Boom! However, after the explosion, Fantai Zhanyuan's eyes widened. It was because Jianglu's simple punch seemed to be able to break everything. Under the punch, the Taotia's shadow was like a piece of paper, and it was shattered in an instant. Even the lightning in the sky dissipated. At the same time, Jianglu rushed forward, and another punch came down. Buzz! The void shook, and the air was distorted. Under this punch, it was as if everything was going to be suppressed and turned into nothingness. At this moment, Fantai Zhanyuan did not dare to be careless. He retreated, and at the same time, he formed a seal with one hand, and runes fell. Ding-dong! As the runes fell, the sound of bells rang out. Then, flowers bloomed everywhere, as if it was a spring scene. Grass and trees grew, flowers bloomed all over the place, and the shadows of birds and beasts could be seen. Fantai Zhanyuan's figure disappeared. He seemed to have transformed into a stalk of grass, a flower, or perhaps a beast. This place seemed to have turned into a painting. The mountains and rivers were painted with ink, causing people to be mesmerized. However, at this moment, Jianglu's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. He was standing in this picture scroll, yet he couldn't sense Fantai Zhanyuan's aura. Come out! Jianglu narrowed his eyes and constantly waved his fists. He wanted to shake off the flowers, plants, birds, and beasts. Humph! You really only know how to use brute force. Fantai Zhanyuan's voice rang out from all directions. It was illusory, making it impossible for others to capture his aura and traces. Alas! He's indeed a little too naive, Jiangchen said with a bitter smile. Come back, Jianglu. Hearing this, Jianglu frowned and said doubtfully, Boss, I haven't lost yet. But you can't win, Jiangchen said. He has transformed into a scene. You can't find him. Even if I don't transform into a scene, I can still win. Fantai Zhanyuan's voice suddenly rang out from behind Jianglu. The next moment, without waiting for anyone to react, Lei Ming suddenly appeared. The bright saber light accompanied by a sharp aura slashed directly at Jianglu's body. You! Jiangchen was furious. He had asked Jianglu to come back. This meant that he had stopped and admitted defeat. However, he didn't expect that Fantai Zhanyuan would dare to attack, and it was a sneak attack. However, just as Jiangchen was furious, he saw Jianglu suddenly turn around and grab Lei Ming. He said coldly, That's it. As his voice fell, everyone saw that there was no wound on Jianglu's back. Even his clothes were not torn. Fantai Zhanyuan was dumbfounded. He had gathered all his strength, and even used his Tao spirit. Even if Jianglu didn't die, he should be seriously injured. But what was the situation now? He was unscathed. Everyone says that I'm simple-minded. Actually, sometimes I'm smart, Jianglu said seriously. Since I can't find you, I'll use myself as bait and wait for you to take the bait. You! Fantai Zhanyuan's expression was grave. The divine power in his body went berserk. Above Lei Ming, lightning shot out like a sharp saber. However, Jianglu's body was too strong. He allowed the sharp saber to pierce his body without moving an inch. Not even his skin was damaged. Then, under Fantai Zhanyuan's horrified gaze, Jianglu suddenly exerted force and pulled Fantai Zhanyuan in front of him. The fist landed, like a golden millstone, bombarding Fantai Zhanyuan's face. Puff! Along with a muffled sound, Fantai Zhanyuan fell to the ground with blood flowing out of his 7 orifices. His divine soul and spirit were also trembling. He was confused and absent-minded. He was completely stunned by this punch. If boss didn't ask me to be gentle, this punch wouldn't have hit your face, but your skull, Jianglu said coldly. After saying that, he turned around and grinned at Jiangchen. Boss, am I smart? Quite smart. Jiangchen had a strange expression on his face. He thought to himself, is this silly guy enlightened? As soon as he said that, Jiangchen's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly shouted, Dodge! However, Jiangchen's words were still too slow. At this moment, Fan Taizhan Yuan, who had been beaten absent-mindedly, suddenly stood up. He gathered all the divine power in his body. A shocking saber radiance burst out and directly pierced Jianglu's chest. Puff! Jianglu spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, his expression became ferocious. He suddenly turned around and grabbed Fan Taizhan Yuan's head. His eyes were red as he said coldly, Do you want to die? You! Fan Taizhan Yuan was dumbfounded. This time, it was an all-out attack. However, Jianglu's physical body was only damaged. It could only be considered a flesh wound. He could not imagine how a cultivator could cultivate their fleshly body to such an extent. Could it be that his physical body wasn't sanctified? Did you want to kill me just now? At this moment, Jianglu stared at Fa Taizhan Yuan. Golden light burst out from his body like a golden pillar of light, shooting straight into the sky. Without waiting for Fan Taizhan Yuan to speak, Jianglu revealed his killing intent. In his palm, violent divine power gathered. Upon seeing this, Jiangchen didn't say anything to stop him. After all, if it was an ordinary person, Fa Taizhan Yuan's attack just now was enough to kill. Since the other party had the intention to kill, it was no wonder that Jianglu had the intention to kill. Let him go. However, the gray-haired old man spoke. With a point of his finger, he captured Jianglu. He looked at Fan Taizhan Yuan and said, Don't underestimate the world of the living. Why should I let him go? Jianglu was furious. He stared at the gray-haired old man and asked, He wanted to kill me just now. Didn't you see it? He came from the netherworld. You can't kill him, the gray-haired old man said. At least, you can't kill him now. Chapter 956. Why can't we kill him just because he's from the netherworld? If I had been killed just now, what would have happened? Jianglu's character was very straightforward. He had doubts in his heart, so he asked on the spot. Jiangchen also frowned and looked at the gray-haired old man in confusion, as if he wanted an explanation. He himself said that he will start the first battle after coming to the netherworld. The gray-haired old man said softly, Then, I'm afraid his identity is not ordinary. So what? Do you think our status is ordinary? The elder of the Poison God Temple said. Although he had a grudge with Jiangchen, he still stood on Jiangchen's side. He chose to support Jianglu. The top force of the netherworld, Deluyan, the gray-haired old man said. The master of Deluyan might be stronger than Lord Zishao. What? It can't be, right? At this moment, everyone was moved, and they were incomparably shocked. Zishao was the master of the world, and his cultivation was unfathomable. Even the God Emperor was threatened by him. It was hard to imagine what realm Zishao's cultivation had reached. He might have surpassed the God Emperor. At this moment, when they learned that the master of Deluyan's cultivation was stronger than Zishao, Jiangchen and the rest felt their hearts skip a beat. Then, what kind of realm is it? Chenjulu asked with a blank face. They had never heard of such a realm. Humph! It's good that you know. At this moment, Fan Taizhan Yuan stood up and wiped the blood from his 7 orifices. He said in a low voice, Today I admit defeat. What do you mean by admit defeat? Jianglu was very unhappy. He pointed at Fan Taizhan Yuan and said, If you are not convinced, let's fight again. I lost this battle, but I'm afraid I will lose in the other battles too. The netherworld is destined to be inferior to the netherworld. Fan Tai Zhanyuan did not agree with Jianglu, but the arrogance in his words was still there. At the same time, he also told everyone that he was not the only one who entered the netherworld this time. Moreover, those people were now in the top sects and fighting with the geniuses of the netherworld. Perhaps on this day, you will know how strong the creatures of the netherworld are. Fan Tai Zhanyuan raised his eyebrows and immediately cupped his hands towards the gray-haired old man. However, there was no trace of respect as he coldly said, "We will come again. You're welcome at any time," the gray-haired old man said softly. After that, Fa Tai Zhanyuan left. The gates to the netherworld haven't been fully opened yet. The living beings that have entered the mortal realm this time aren't very powerful. The gray-haired old man muttered to himself. Are they here to scout out the situation in the mortal realm, or are they taking this opportunity to use the prodigies of the mortal realm as whetstones? It doesn't matter how many of them there are. Raise your hand and suppress it. Wakako felt very uncomfortable. He wanted to fight from the start, but he was stopped by Jiangqun. Now, the battle intent in his body had exploded, and he could not suppress it at all. There will be plenty of chances. They will come again. The gray-haired old man smiled. When the time comes, I'll let you go. Huh! Suddenly, the Poison God Temple elder's expression changed. He had received a message from the Poison God Temple. The new holy son of the Poison God Temple. Lost? At this moment, the elder of the Poison God Temple cried out in alarm, his expression incomparably gloomy. What happened? The descendant of the Clear Sky God Emperor asked. A living being from the netherworld went to the Poison God Temple and fought with the holy son of the Poison God Temple. Our holy son, lost. The elder of the Poison God Temple had an ugly expression on his face. The newly appointed holy son had been defeated before he had even made a name for himself. To the Poison God Temple, this could be said to be a kind of humiliation. The current holy son of the Poison God Temple is really weak. Yu Guang mocked. Not only was your holy son defeated, he was also killed by Jiangqun. You! Speak less. The elder of the Poison God Temple angrily rebuked. Having his wound exposed like this, he almost went berserk. However, just as Yu Guang finished speaking, his expression also turned ugly. Look at your expression. The descendant of the Clear Sky God Emperor stared at Yu Guang and asked, It can't be? Damn it! The holy son of the Moon Clan was also defeated. Those damned netherworld bastards actually crippled the cultivation of the holy son of the Moon Clan. Yu Guang's killing intent exploded. He couldn't wait to kill that living being from the netherworld right now. You still have the face to talk about the Poison God Temple. Your holy son of the Moon Clan is really something. The elder of the Poison God Temple mocked. Let's appoint a new holy son. Fortunately, the Clear Sky God Emperor's clan is fine. The descendant of the Clear Sky God Emperor said softly. However, before he could finish speaking, he also received a message. At this moment, his killing intent exploded. He directly turned into a ray of light and disappeared from the place. This stunned everyone. He was still quite calm before. Why did he suddenly leave? I reckon that something big happened in the Clear Sky God Emperor's clan. The loss might be even more serious than the Poison God Temples. The elder of the Poison God Temple muttered. Living beings from the netherworld, are they going to challenge all the geniuses of the Young Realm? In any case, our Flourishing Age Academy is not afraid. We will suppress as many as they come. However, even so, no one dared to underestimate the living beings of the netherworld. One had to know that the Son of Heaven had been defeated by Fan Tai Zhanyuan. In the entire Glory World Academy, how many disciples were stronger than the Son of Heaven? Some people even thought that if it weren't for Jiang Lu and the others today, the Glory World Academy would also be defeated. Go back and cultivate. The next few days will be lively. The gray-haired old man sighed. This is just a prelude. The real battle has yet to come. Senior, those supreme experts of the netherworld have yet to descend. Are we really not going to kill those juniors of the netherworld? The elder of the Poison God Temple asked. There are juniors and mortals in the netherworld, And so do we in the Yang realm, the gray-haired old man said. If we kill their descendants, they will do the same when they descend. At that time, all the juniors will die, and all the mortals will be destroyed. Our foundation will be broken. Hearing this, everyone nodded inwardly. They also understood this logic. However, were they going to let those living beings from the netherworld run rampant in the Yang realm? Disperse, disperse. Go back and cultivate. Jiangchen waved his hand and turned to leave. However, when he turned around, he saw Wakako standing still with a dark face. What are you doing? Jiangchen asked. Those self-righteous geniuses from the netherworld will definitely come again. I'm waiting for them here, Wakako said. This time, I'm going to make the first move. Don't stop me. Are all overlord bodies like this? Jiangchen smiled bitterly. Okay. You wait here. Actually, I feel that Fa Tai Zhan Yuan shouldn't be my opponent. Dongfang Wushuang, who was also an overlord body, also stayed behind. The two of them were burning with fighting spirit. They stood in front of the central hall like two door gods, waiting for the arrival of the living beings of the netherworld. Seeing this, everyone was speechless. What do you two mean? Are you afraid that others will snatch your prey? Chapter 957. The beings of the netherworld attacked and defeated the saints of the various top factions. For a time, the entire Yang realm was shaken. However, no one would have thought that there were two door gods waiting for the beings of the netherworld in the Flourishing Age Academy. The Glittering Age Academy also won. A day later, the descendant of the heavenly god Emperor returned with a piece of news. Among the top factions in the Yang realm, other than the Flourishing Age Academy, the Glittering Age Academy established by the Pingtian clan also won. The Glittering Age Academy was different from the Flourishing Age Academy. The Glittering Age Academy recruited disciples. As long as you had some talent, they would accept all of you. It could be said that they did not reject anyone. With the victory of the Glittering Age Academy, their reputation soared. Many people joined the Glittering Age Academy. For a time, the Glittering Age Academy became the academy with the most people in the Yang realm. There were even people who said that the Glittering Age Academy was above the Flourishing Age Academy. Regarding this, the Flourishing Age Academy did not say anything, as if they did not want to compete with the Glittering Age Academy. As for the disciples of the Flourishing Age Academy, they were also very calm. They each cared about their own cultivation and ignored the outside world. 3 days later, an important piece of news spread throughout the Yang realm. At the border between the Yang realm and the Yang realm, a top expert descended from the netherworld. His aura was extremely strong, like an emperor. After he descended to the Yang realm, he went straight to Yongzhou. With his strongest attitude and strength, he swept through Yongzhou and declared himself king. On this day, the beings who had entered the Yang realm previously all entered Yongzhou. That place became their stronghold in the Yang realm. There are so many top factions in the Yang realm. Are they just going to ignore it? The ancient divine kings, the divine emperor's clan, the Glittering Age Academy, and the Flourishing Age Academy, are they just going to watch the Yang realm occupy Yongzhou? Everyone was puzzled. They did not see the top experts of the Yang realm make a move. This made many people speculate. Could it be that the Yang realm had really declined, and no one could stop the supreme experts of the Yang realm? Yin and Yang are one. Although they are opposites, they can also merge. More than 10 days later, the Emperor of the Yang realm said that he wanted to take in disciples of the Yang realm as disciples. He even told everyone that the Yang realm would not target the living beings of the Yang realm. If they wanted to, they could join the Yang realm. This made many people's Yang realm experts, the Emperor of the Yang realm. This action of not spilling blood was too sinister. They thought that the living beings of the Yang realm would understand this principle, but to their surprise, on the same day, many living beings of the Yang realm sought refuge and became disciples of the netherworld. There were even a few top forces that decided to join the alliance and settle down in Yongzhou. These people have betrayed the mortal realm? Become a lackey of the underworld. They will regret it sooner or later. However, As time passed, more and more living beings from the mortal realm joined the underworld. There were even rumors that several ancient deity kings had also joined the king of the underworld. This caused many people's hearts to turn cold. Was the underworld really that strong? Even the ancient gods had given up on the mortal realm. Could it be that the netherworld was truly unstoppable? But there were also people who understood the reason. The emperor of the netherworld had arrived, but the top powerhouses of the mortal realm hadn't made a move yet. Wasn't this the same as boosting the might and prestige of the netherworld? Over time, many people began to believe that the mortal realm was indeed inferior to the netherworld. It was only normal for them to betray the mortal realm in order to protect themselves and survive. Enter the netherworld and obtain the great Tao. The foundation of the netherworld is far deeper than that of the mortal realm. Half a month later, the emperor of the netherworld spoke again. In order to prove that the Tao of the netherworld was stronger than that of the mortal realm, he sent out a group of prodigies of the netherworld to challenge the saints of the top sections. In just 3 days, almost all the top forces of the mortal realm were swept away. Compared to the geniuses of the mortal realm, the geniuses of the netherworld are simply too strong. Many prodigies who have been famous in the mortal realm for a long time can't even last 100 rounds against them. Some were even killed in an instant. Too strong. Is this the difference between the netherworld and the mortal realm? As the victories of the netherworld increased, the morale of the mortal realm fell to the bottom. However, there were 2 exceptions. Linlang Academy had never been defeated, and neither had Xingshi Academy. At the same time, Martial God's Martial Pavilion had never been defeated either. It was acceptable that Linlang Academy had never been defeated. After all, it was established by the Pingtian clan and had a deep foundation. Everyone could understand that Xingshi Academy had never been defeated. It was established in the world. However, Martial God's Martial Pavilion had never been defeated, which made many people puzzled. Is Martial Pavilion really that strong? I really didn't expect Martial Pavilion to have such a deep foundation. Their disciples are so powerful. Just as everyone was discussing Martial Pavilion, a piece of news came from Xingshi Academy. When Dongfang Wushuang was fighting with a prodigy of the netherworld, he accidentally killed his opponent. What? Someone died! Something big happened. One had to know that after the creatures of the netherworld entered the mortal realm, although they had been challenging the prodigies of the major forces, there had never been a death. This time, Xingshi Academy was broken. Everyone was watching, not knowing if the emperor of the netherworld in Yongzhou would make trouble. However, what surprised people was that the emperor of the netherworld in Yongzhou did not react at all. However, for more than 10 days, Yongzhou kept sending prodigies to Xingshi Academy, as if they wanted to regain their face. Unfortunately, with Wakako and Dongfang Wushuang, the 2 door gods, the prodigies of the netherworld could not win. 2 great overlord bodies. They can be said to be unparalleled. The 2 door gods of Xingshi Academy. Many people exclaimed, and their hearts burned with a raging fire. They seemed to see the hope of the younger generation of the mortal realm in Wakako and Dongfang Wushuang. Are those 2 brats really that strong? Ha, Xingshi Academy, let's go and meet them. Just as everyone thought that Yongzhou would continue to send people over, unexpectedly, the next group of people who went to challenge Xingshi Academy was actually from Linlang Academy. At this time, there's still a civil war. What is Linlang Academy thinking? Instead of dealing with the creatures of the netherworld, they're actually attacking Xingshi Academy. The creatures of the mortal realm were angry, but they also knew what Linlang Academy meant. The 2 academies were established one after the other, so they had to compete. Moreover, the Tianya clan and Hitian clan were mortal enemies. When the 2 appeared, there would definitely be a conflict. I heard that Xingshi Academy has 2 door gods. Today, Linlang Academy will come and meet them. Let me see how powerful the so-called overlord body is. Is it as powerful as the rumors say, or the rumors are a bit exaggerated? On this day, the people of Linlang Academy came. There were a total of 2 people who came. They were both high-level gods, and their realms were not much different from Wakako and Dongfang Wushuang. As soon as the two of them came here, they first talked nonsense, and then, there was no then. It was because Wakako and Dongfang Wushuang were too lazy to talk nonsense. They directly attacked and crippled the two of them, then threw them out of Xingshi Academy. Chapter 958. The two overlord bodies were like the door gods of Flourishing Age Academy. They dared to fight any cultivator of the same realm who dared to come. Glittering Age Academy was furious. That day, they sent two top disciples to Flourishing Age Academy. And this battle was very intense. In the end, Wakako and Dongfang Wushuang won by a narrow margin. Then, the two door gods couldn't take it anymore. Their injuries were too serious, so they went into seclusion to heal. Flourishing Age Academy won again. Without the two overlord bodies, Flourishing Age Academy is just like that. Many people sighed. They thought that among the disciples of Flourishing Age Academy, only Wakako and Dongfang Wushuang were powerful. And now, without these two people, Flourishing Age Academy seemed to have lost its face and was about to fall. Flourishing Age Academy? Heh. 3 days later, in front of Flourishing Age Academy's central main hall, Fa Tai Zhanyuan came again. This time, he brought a young man. Both of them had reached the upper-level god realm, and their aura was very powerful. Fa Tai Zhanyuan's aura was even more terrifying. He had vaguely reached the level of a titled god. When he opened his eyes, wisps of yin-chi floated like cold stars. "Are you looking for a beating?" Jianglu walked out immediately. When he saw Fa Tai Zhanyuan, a trace of contempt flashed through his eyes. Jianglu was very simple and honest, so he wouldn't hide his thoughts. "Looking down on you is looking down on you." Hearing that, Fa Tai Zhanyuan laughed mockingly and said, "I haven't seen you for a while, but you're still the same." "You're about the same." Jianglu raised his eyebrows and said, "What? You still want to fight today? If you're not here to fight, could it be that you're here to reminisce?" After saying that, Fa Tai Zhanyuan took a step forward. His eyes flickered with confidence as he said, "Today I'll suppress you. So much nonsense. Fight." Jianglu rushed out. Golden light rose from his body as if he was a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus. When he stepped out, the earth shook, and a shadow appeared behind him. His left hand formed a fist print, and his right hand formed a palm print. When the fist and palm met, it was like two golden mountains, pressing toward Fa Tai Zhanyuan. "You still only know brute force," Fa Tai Zhanyuan said disdainfully. Then, he summoned his Tao soul, Lei Ming, and slashed down. It was as if the Milky Way was flowing backwards. It slashed towards Jianglu's head. In the next moment, there was a loud explosion as Jianglu pushed his palm forward. Golden light flashed as if it was an indestructible golden body. With a single palm strike, the sound of thunder was dispersed. Then, a punch was thrown out. Like a falling meteor, it smashed into Fa Tai Zhanyuan's body. Puff! Fresh blood sprayed out from Fa Tai Zhanyuan's mouth. His chest caved in, and his face was pale. Even his divine soul was nearly destroyed. "I'm still the same," Jianglu said softly. "And you're still the same. You're still so weak that you can't even take a punch from me. You!" Fa Tai Zhanyuan was furious, but he was defeated again. It seems that in addition to the two overlord bodies, Flourishing Age Academy also has an eternal sacred body. At this moment, the young man who came with Fa Tai Zhanyuan chuckled. He did not care about Fa Tai Zhanyuan's injuries at all. He smiled at Jianglu, his smile full of contempt. Boom! In the next moment, the young man suddenly took a step forward. His speed was like a bolt of lightning as he flashed past. When he reappeared, he had already fallen behind Jianglu. At the same time, his palm was stained with golden blood. Puff! Jianglu was stunned and blood sprayed out from his mouth. He lowered his head in a daze and looked at the wound that pierced through his chest. His eyes were full of disbelief. His unparalleled physical body was broken, and he did not even have time to react. Jianglu could not see how the young man attacked. He only felt a ray of light pass by him. Flourishing Age Academy has lost after all. The young man waved the golden blood in his hand and smiled at Jianglu. He said, "You can't do it. You." Jianglu was furious. However, as he spoke, he sprayed out a few more mouthfuls of blood, along with his internal organs. He was seriously injured. What's there to be proud of when a titled deity defeated a superior deity? At this moment, a lazy voice was heard. There was a trace of anger in the voice. Hearing this, the young man turned around and saw a lower true deity appear in front of the central palace. Lower true deity? The young man was stunned. How could there be someone with such a low cultivation in Flourishing Age Academy? "I'm a teacher of Flourishing Age Academy," Jiang Chen said softly and pointed at Jianglu. "And he is my little brother." "Oh? A lower true deity is the big brother, and a superior deity is the little brother? How interesting," the young man joked. "What? Your little brother was beaten up. As the big brother, are you going to intervene?" Hearing this, Jiang Chen stepped forward and nodded naturally. He said, "My little brother was beaten up. As the big brother, of course I have to intervene. Otherwise, why would others call me big brother?" "You!" The young man suddenly laughed and looked at Jiang Chen with disdain. He said, "You are really a teacher of Flourishing Age Academy?" "Of course." Jiang Chen nodded. "Your cultivation." The young man frowned and said, "I don't want to fight with you." "Oh? Is that so?" Jiang Chen said softly. Suddenly, a dragon's shadow appeared behind him, and a tiger's shadow appeared in front of him. Roses began to revolve around her, as if thousands of flowers were blooming in the spring. In the next moment, Jiang Chen rushed out. The dragon and tiger shadows burst forth, like two sharp edges, directly bombarding the young man's body. Without waiting for the young man to react, Jiang Chen punched out. The tiger's roar shook the sky and directly suppressed the young man on the ground. "I remember that both sides tacitly agreed that only cultivators of the same realm can fight, right? Today, you injured my Flourishing Age Academy's superior deity disciple with your titled deity cultivation. This, you have to give an explanation, right?" Jiang Chen said in a low voice. He walked up to the youngster and pressed his hand on his head. His eyes flickered coldly. He said, "Give me an explanation. Otherwise, you won't be able to leave. You dare to kill me!" The young man raised his eyebrows. Although he was shocked by Jiang Chen's strength, he was not afraid. An emperor from the underworld had descended on Yongzhou, and no one from the Yang realm dared to go. This made the creatures of the underworld even more arrogant and confident. They believed that the strongest of the Yang realm would not dare to make a move. It was precisely because of this that the creatures of the underworld had become more and more arrogant and despotic during this period of time. "To be honest, I really don't want to kill you unless it's a last resort," Jiang Chen said truthfully. "After all, you have an emperor in the underworld. It's good that you know," the young man said coldly. "If the emperor of the underworld makes a move, it's enough to wipe out the entire Yang realm. Kill him." At this moment, the gray-haired old man suddenly appeared. He nodded at Jiang Chen and said, "It's about time. We don't have to back down anymore." "Senior, what do you mean?" Jiang Chen stared at the gray-haired old man and thought to himself that something big was going to happen. Chapter 959. During this period of time, the strongest people in the Yang realm did not make a move, allowing the Emperor of the Netherworld to dominate Yongzhou. This made many people's hearts turn cold, and they thought that the Emperor of the Netherworld was invincible in the Yang realm, and no one dared to go against him. However, at this moment, Jiang Chen understood that this was not the case. Previously, when the creatures of the Netherworld came to Glory World Academy to cause trouble, Glory World Academy had been merciful, except for that time when Dongfang Wushuang accidentally killed the other party. Other than that, no matter how excessive the other party was, they would let them go. However, this time, it was different. The gray-haired old man personally said that they could kill the other party. This meant that the Yang realm was about to make a move. Perhaps only the Tianya was about to make a move, or perhaps the entire Yang realm was about to make a move against the Netherworld. However, no matter what, the battle between the Yang realm and the Yang realm was about to escalate. Previously, it had always been a battle between the juniors, but now, it was probably going to escalate to a battle between the top level. That kind of battle was not something that Divine Kings could participate in. Even peak Divine Kings might not be qualified to participate. If you dare to kill me, the Emperor of the Netherworld will not let you off! The young man's face was pale. He could tell that the gray-haired old man was not joking. What made him feel the most despair was that the lower true god in front of him was too strong. In just a single exchange, he had been suppressed. Now, no matter how he struggled, he could not break free from Jiang Chen's palm. You shouldn't have come here, Jiang Chen said softly. His palm suddenly shook, and he killed the other party. At this moment, Fan Tai Zhanyuan's face was also as pale as paper. He looked at Jiang Chen in panic, his lips trembling, but he could not say a word. Do you want to beg for mercy? Jiang Chen looked at Fa Tai Zhanyuan mockingly. Without waiting for the other party to speak, he shook his head and said, Unfortunately, I can't let you go this time. Wait. I'll tell you a secret in exchange for my life. Fa Tai Zhanyuan hurriedly said. The fear in his heart had made him lose his mind. Now, he only wanted to live. Oh? What secret? Jiang Chen asked. There are 2 emperors who have descended upon the mortal realm this time. Apart from the one in Yong State, there is one more. Fa Tai Zhanyuan said. That is my great flowing cloud's old ancestor. He is not weaker than the one in Yong State. The one from Great Luyun? The gray-haired old man chuckled. A hint of mockery flashed in his eyes as he asked, Then do you know what Lord Zishao of the Horizon of the World has been doing recently? Do you know why you can't contact that old ancestor of the great flowing cloud? When these words came out, not only was Fa Tai Zhanyuan stunned, even Jiang Chen was a bit confused. A few breaths later, Jiang Chen reacted. With a strange expression, he asked tentatively, During this period of time, could Lord Zishao have? That's right. The gray-haired old man smiled and said, My lord had already sensed the arrival of the Underworld Emperor, and had already taken action. Just yesterday, outside the Eastern Sea Forbidden Zone, we killed the monarch of the Great Flowing Cloud. Impossible! The ancestor of the Great Luyun is the true emperor. He can't be dead. Fa Tai Zhanyuan's expression was gloomy. He was unwilling to believe this. However, Fa Tai Zhanyuan also knew that if the ancestor of the Great Luyun was not killed, then the horizon of the world would not dare to kill him. The one from Yong Prefecture? In our eyes, he's just a clown. The gray-haired old man said disdainfully. Does he really think he's an emperor? He's just a fake god emperor. The foundation of the Yang realm is not something a mere underworld like you can imagine. Boom! After saying that, the gray-haired old man pointed his finger and directly pierced through Fa Tai Zhanyuan's forehead, destroying his soul. Then, the gray-haired old man looked into the distance and said softly, It's time for the Pingtian clan to take action, right? Civil war is civil war, but those who should be killed still have to be killed. There are some troublesome matters that cannot be handled by the horizon of the world. Senior, do you mean that the Pingtian clan is also going to take action? Who are they going to take action against? Jiang Chen asked. As soon as Jiang Chen said that, he realized how foolish he was. Since the Pingtian clan had taken action, they were naturally going to take action against the strongest being in the Yang realm. Then, after the death of the great Luyun Emperor, the strongest being in the Yang realm was the fake god Emperor of Yong Prefecture. Senior, are we going to go to war? Jiang Chen asked. Not necessarily. The gray-haired old man shook his head and said, It's just a warning to the Yang realm. Since you've come to the Yang realm's territory, then keep a low profile. The Yang realm won't let the matter rest after losing 2 emperors, right? Jiang Chen frowned and said, Once the boundary between the Yang realm and the Yang realm completely opens, a large number of experts from the Yang realm will descend. Can the Yang realm stop them? Why can't they? The gray-haired old man smiled and seemed very confident. There are so many forbidden zones in the Yang realm, and there are even a few God-Emperor clans. Do you think they can't stop the Yang realm? However, when he said this, a hint of worry flashed through the gray-haired old man's eyes. It was because the matter was not as simple as he said. During this period of time, the creatures of the Yang realm shouldn't cause any more trouble. You guys should take the opportunity to cultivate well, the gray-haired old man said. Throwing Jiangchen a meaningful look, he said, there are some methods that you'd better not practice. What technique? Jiangchen frowned. The gray-haired old man clearly had a hidden meaning in his words. However, Jiangchen didn't know which technique the gray-haired old man was referring to. Was it the heavenly scripture? Or the tiger soul technique? Or was it the soul ascension demonic technique? Some things are destined by the heavens and cannot be changed, the gray-haired old man said. If you forcefully change something, then it might lead to some disasters and terror. With that, the gray-haired old man disappeared on the spot. This made Jiangchen a little confused. For a moment, he couldn't figure out what the gray-haired old man was talking about. Could it be the soul ascension demonic technique? Jiangchen whispered. Currently, Jiangchen cultivated 3 types of techniques: the heavenly scripture, the tiger soul technique, and the soul ascension demonic technique. However, to be specific, the heavenly scripture and the excruciating earth sect originated from the same source. The heavenly scripture and the tiger soul technique were ultimately the same type of technique. In that case, it was as if he had only cultivated 2 cultivation techniques. While Jiangchen was guessing in confusion, he suddenly felt his heart throbbing. Then, he saw that the sky in the distance was actually blood-red. There was even a blood-red rain falling from the sky. In the void, there seemed to be endless weeping coming from above the 9 heavens. Heaven's wail? Jiangchen was shocked. Looking at the blood-red color that dyed half the sky red, he knew that this was not an ordinary heaven's wail. Such a strange phenomenon would only appear when a supreme being died. Is it the heaven's wail after the emperor of the Great Luyun was killed? Jiangchen whispered, but quickly rejected the idea. The emperor of the Great Luyun was killed by Zishao yesterday. If the heaven's wail was caused by the emperor of the Great Luyun, it should have appeared yesterday and not now. Chapter 960. The Emperor of Delian was killed yesterday, so Heaven's wail shouldn't have appeared only now. Then, who did Heaven's wail appear now? Could it be? Jiang Chen's expression froze as he looked in the direction of Yongzhou. There was a patch of blood there, as if 2 holes had appeared in the sky. They were like 2 eyes that were dripping blood. The one from Yongzhou? Dead? At this moment, Jiang Chen suddenly realized something. The Yang realm wasn't as weak as it appeared. Not attacking before didn't mean that the Yang realm was afraid of the netherworld. Perhaps, they were just investigating the situation of the netherworld. As expected, in a short span of a day, a piece of news spread. The fake emperor of Yongzhou was killed, and the person who did it was the dean of Linlang Academy. Linlang Academy was established by the Pingtian family, so the dean was naturally from the Pingtian family. The 2 strongest forces in the Yang realm have made their move, Jiang Chen said softly. He didn't know if this was good or bad. The gate between the 2 realms hadn't been completely opened yet. They had only sent some young people and 2 emperors. This could be considered as a vanguard to investigate the situation of the Yang realm. The main force hadn't arrived yet. And now, before the main force of the netherworld had arrived, 2 emperors had died. Would the netherworld let it go? When the gate between the 2 realms was completely opened, a war might break out because of this. Sigh. Even if the sky falls, there are tall people to hold it up. Why am I worrying here? Jiang Chen said self-deprecatingly. His cultivation was too low now. Although his combat strength was extremely strong, his cultivation was a shortcoming. Moreover, the situation was getting more and more serious. Ordinary divine kings couldn't participate. And even if Jiangqing transformed his spiritual body to 3,000 or even 5,000, it would probably be difficult for him to participate in this war. What he needed to do now, besides cultivating, was still cultivating. As for the world, let him be. Why is there an internal war in the burial ground? At this moment, outside the southern wall, many creatures had gathered. Through the southern wall, they saw the scene of the two emperors falling. This made them very confused. Facing a great enemy, shouldn't the ninth heaven god realm join forces? The burial ground has always been like this. These creatures have probably forgotten their mission. A humanoid creature replied. They're just a bunch of ignorant and foolish dregs, banished by the main planet to guard the burial grounds for generations. Pitiful, pathetic. Just as a group of people were looking down on the ninth heaven god world, a living being whose entire body was shrouded in dazzling light appeared. He had 6 heads, a pair of wings on his back, and raging flames floating around him. With his appearance, the area outside the southern wall suddenly quieted down. Don't underestimate the burial ground. The living being spoke with a solemn voice. Our ancestors had attacked the burial ground several times, but they were never able to reclaim this place. Not even that thing could be found. In a certain era, the ancestors of the Great Thousand World paid a great price for the minor necropolis. When everyone heard this, they were all moved. Some people even thought of the humiliating history of the Great Thousand World. At that time, the Greater Thousand World was extremely glorious and powerful. The top experts of the various sects and forces joined forces to attack the burial ground. But in the end? At that time, they couldn't even break the southern wall. The most humiliating thing for the Great Thousand World was that not only could the southern wall not be broken, but there was also an unknown creature in the burial ground that attacked through the southern wall, and killed a large number of top experts of the Great Thousand World. When they retreated, the beings of the Great Thousand World didn't even know who the creature that attacked through the southern wall was. They didn't even see its appearance. It's different this time. A great sage has deduced that the burial ground has declined and is no longer the same as before. That's right, the great sage's deduction has never been wrong. This time, we'll wait for the southern wall to break, then we'll attack the burial ground and destroy this filthy place. A few extremely powerful creatures spoke, full of confidence. However, the 6-headed creature suddenly erupted with terrifying killing intent. He looked at the creatures who spoke and scolded angrily. You dare to say that the burial ground is filthy? Even if your ancestors came, they wouldn't dare to say that. This? Why? It's the burial ground, a tomb. Isn't it filthy? Many creatures were puzzled, not knowing why the 6-headed creature was angry. This is the burial ground, and also the place of origin, the 6-headed creature said in a deep voice. In an ancient era, before the Great Thousand World was formed, the burial ground already existed. A sage once speculated that our ancestors might have come from the burial ground, and this might be our original home. As soon as these words were said, the faces of many creatures of the Great Thousand World darkened, and disgust flashed in their eyes. They didn't agree with this statement. In their hearts, the Great Thousand World was high and mighty, sacred and flawless. And this burial ground was a tomb, where filthy things were buried. If this place was their original home, then it was a bit laughable, and even more unacceptable. Red Lotus Venerable, the battle in the burial ground is quite lively. Why don't we send a few people down to have some fun? A creature suggested. With our strength, it shouldn't be a problem to send a few venerable gods down. Yeah, it's boring to keep waiting. Why don't we send a few juniors down and treat it as training? Obviously, these creatures were bored and wanted to find something to do. Some even suggested sending people down to hunt the creatures in the burial ground, and use this as a game to see who could kill more. Aren't you afraid that the people we send down will be killed by the creatures in the burial ground? Someone frowned and said, based on our current situation and the degree of damage to the southern wall, the creatures we send down can't surpass the chief god level. And there are plenty of creatures in the burial ground that can easily kill chief gods. Many people nodded in agreement. Sending people down now would be sending them to their deaths. In an instant, everyone's gazes fell upon the 6 living beings. They were the living beings known as the Red Lotus Venerable. We'll have to fight sooner or later. We can discuss with the creatures in the burial ground, Red Lotus Venerable said softly. As long as there are restrictions between us, we can give it a try. With that, a wisp of flames on Red Lotus Venerable's body turned into divine light and quietly entered the southern wall. Then, it flew in the direction of Linlang Academy and the world's edge. A few days later, the wisp of flames returned. Red Lotus Venerable said with a smile, "Send someone down." They agreed? They really agreed? Everyone was puzzled. They wanted to send people down to hunt the creatures in the burial ground, but the strongest creatures in the burial ground actually agreed? That was impossible, right? They're not stupid. They know that they have to nurture a new generation, Red Lotus Venerable said. Perhaps they've long given up on themselves. Chapter 961. They don't have any hope for themselves? Everyone was puzzled. They knew who Venerable Red Lotus was talking about. Those people were the strongest in the burial ground. Any one of them could dominate a region and even shock the entire history. Why didn't those people have any hope for themselves? Did they give up on themselves? Or could it be that they had foreseen something? There are some things that even I don't know. The great sage has never revealed them, Venerable Red Lotus whispered. In short, let these juniors go down and play first. On this day, a crack appeared in the sky of the 9th heaven divine world. Dozens of meteors fell from the outer realm and scattered in various places of the 9th heaven divine world. On the same day, Linlang Academy in Tianya announced to the world that they were cultivators from the boundless world, and their cultivations were all in the titled God realm. Moreover, the 2 forces also promised that whoever could kill these creatures from the boundless world would be seriously injured and even receive the true teachings of the 2 forces. However, the premise was that they could not bully the weak. This made the creatures of the 9th heaven divine world excited. Many people were already preparing to hunt these creatures from the boundless world and receive great rewards. However, some people were worried because they could not bully the weak. Why was this? Many people were guessing that the 2 top forces were afraid of the boundless world. Otherwise, why would they agree to such a request? However, due to the strength of the 2 forces, no one dared to bully the weak. Something big has happened. In just one day, more than 700 people have been killed in the 9th heaven divine world. They are all at the level of geniuses. A few of them are monsters who have the potential to become divine kings. The next day, a piece of news swept through the 9th heaven divine world. The creatures sent by the boundless world were too powerful. They were also titled gods, but they could easily kill the titled gods of the 9th heaven divine world. In one day, more than 700 people were killed. Among them were 2 descendants of the Emperor God's clan. The burial ground is too weak. Under the same realm, our boundless world is invincible. In the outer realm, Venerable Red Lotus and the others watched all this with smiles on their faces. It was as if they could see the scene of the burial ground being destroyed in the future. Some people even became arrogant and declared that they would personally kill the top experts in the burial ground. Like I said, the great sage's divination can't be wrong. This era's burial ground is too weak. Once the southern wall collapses, we'll slaughter our way in. Perhaps we won't even need an army to come here. Just a few of us will be enough to destroy the burial ground. However, just as these people were full of confidence and bragging, Venerable Red Lotus's expression suddenly changed. Within his pupils, raging flames rose and fell, transforming into numerous runes of the great Tao. His eyes seemed to be able to see everything clearly. At this moment, he stretched out a finger and pointed at a certain place in the burial ground. He asked, "What is that place?" "From the looks of it, it should be an academy." Someone replied, "Venerable Red Lotus, is there a problem?" "All of you, see for yourselves," Venerable Red Lotus said in a deep voice. As soon as he finished speaking, Everyone's eyes lit up. Like two rays of light, they shot towards the direction he was pointing at. In the next moment, the faces of this group of people instantly darkened. Somewhere in the burial ground, in front of an academy, there were more than 10 living beings from the greater thousand worlds lying there. Their bodies were still emitting lightning, and there were also raging flames and strong winds howling. Their auras of life had disappeared, and their souls and spirits had collapsed. These more than 10 titled deities from the greater thousand worlds were actually dead. Beside them, there was a handsome young man dressed in white. He was looking at the sky with a smile on his face. It was as if this young man knew that they were looking at him. What a coincidence. You guys came just as I was undergoing my tribulation, the young man said softly. He dusted off the dust and blood on his body, then turned around and entered the academy. Upon closer inspection, the words, "Flourishing Age," could be seen at the entrance of the academy. Flourishing Age Academy? Who is that kid? The group of people was shocked, especially Venerable Red Lotus. He could clearly see that the young man in white was only a lesser true god, but he could attract a heavenly tribulation that was not weaker than that of a titled deity. In fact, the heavenly tribulation was not ordinary. It was mixed with heavenly punishment and heavenly wrath. Send someone over and investigate, Venerable Red Lotus said in a deep voice. One heavenly tribulation actually killed more than 10 geniuses from our greater thousand worlds. At this moment, in the Flourishing Age Academy, Jiangchen came to the West Hall with a smile on his face. Bai Fingyu and the others looked a little nervous. When they saw Jiangchen, they hurriedly rushed over to check on Jiangchen's body. Master, what tribulation did you undergo just now? It's so terrifying, Bai Fingyu said softly. Are you okay? Master, let me see if you're injured. Nayland Mayer also walked over. Her slender jade-like hands touched Jiangchen's body, and the charming expression on her face became more and more intense. Jiangchen hurriedly took a few steps back, wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, and said, I'm fine. I'm really fine. Master, we're also worried about you, Nayland Mayer said with a serious expression. We can't see your injuries with your clothes on. Why don't you take them off? Jiang Chen's expression instantly stiffened. He glared at Nayland Mayer and said snappily, With such cultivation, you can't see if I'm injured or not? You still want me to take off my clothes? After saying that, Jiang Chen's body trembled and he hurriedly walked out of the West Hall. He suddenly felt that the West Hall was not easy to stay in. Ever since these 3 female disciples returned to his side, Jiang Chen had to be on guard all day long. He was afraid that if he was not careful, he would be slept with by these 3. Sometimes, Jiang Chen had to set up layers of formations and barriers when he was cultivating, as if he was afraid that his innocence would be exposed. Boss, are those people the creatures of the upper-class world? What do you think? Are they powerful? When he came out of the West Hall, he happened to meet Wakako. He walked over. His previous injuries had been healed, and at this moment, his face was full of fighting spirit. Very strong, Jiangchen said seriously. If it weren't for the fact that I happened to be crossing the tribulation and they happened to be involved, I wouldn't be their opponent. If I break through to the titled god level, can I fight with them? Wakako asked. Wakako's cultivation speed was very fast. Previously, he was a god, and now he was about to step into the titled god level. Maybe. Jiangchen was not sure. It was because they knew nothing about the cultivators of the upper-class world. The only thing they could be sure of was that they were all very strong. Perhaps it was because the world was different, and the environment was different, so the creatures of the upper-class world were generally stronger than the 9th heaven divine realm. I really hope to fight with those creatures, Wakako whispered. I have already touched the threshold of the titled god level. If I can fight with them, maybe I can break through and step into the titled god level in one fell swoop. As soon as Wakako finished speaking, Jiang Chen's pupils suddenly shrank, and he said in a deep voice, They're here! Chapter 962. Outside the gate of the Flourishing Age Academy, a young man in a black robe descended. He was very cautious and did not enter the academy, as if he was worried about the array barrier in the academy. You killed the people of the Great Thousand World? Come out and accept your death. The young man was cautious, but he was not arrogant. He stood outside the gate, and his voice was like thunder, shaking all directions. At this moment, the disciples of the Flourishing Age Academy walked out. Even a few mentors stood outside the central palace, quietly staring at the young man. Who killed the geniuses of the Great Thousand World? Come out and kneel down to accept your death. The young man spoke again. His aura was extremely strong, and there was a divine ring behind him. A titled deity has already given birth to a divine ring. This is a heavenly talent. In the future, he will definitely become a divine king. Are all the cultivators of the Great Thousand Worlds so strong? In the Flourishing Age Academy, there were exclamations, and some people's eyes were filled with fear. After all, after the creatures of the Great Thousand World entered the divine realm, they killed more than 700 people in one day. And these 700 people were all famous geniuses. This made many people fearful. At this moment, Jiang Chun was also standing in front of the central palace. He said with a wry smile, They accidentally broke into my heavenly tribulation, so they were killed. I didn't mean to kill them. A lesser true god? The young man's eyes narrowed, and he muttered in his heart, A lesser true god's heavenly tribulation can kill a titled deity. One had to know that a titled deity was not called a titled deity for nothing. Anyone who stepped into the titled deity realm would be blessed by the heavens and be given a title. It was not just a simple title, but it was accompanied by magical powers and the power of the heavens' protection. Under normal circumstances, only a heavenly tribulation of the same realm, or even a higher realm, could kill a titled deity. As for a lesser true god's heavenly tribulation, no matter how terrifying it was, it could not break the defense of a titled deity. A mere lesser true god. Don't talk nonsense here, the young man said coldly. Hand over the murderer. You don't believe me? Jiang Chun was speechless. His old face was slightly red, and he said awkwardly, Although I'm just a lesser true god, I'm very strong. I don't want to talk nonsense with you. Hand over the murderer. The young man didn't believe Jiang Chun. His killing intent grew stronger as he said, Are you going to protect him? You wouldn't believe me even if I told you. Jiang Chun snappily replied. After which, his eyes turned cold as a sharp glint flashed in his eyes. You guys killed over 700 geniuses from the divine world. Who is the murderer? As soon as these words came out, the young man couldn't help but chuckle a few times, his face full of contempt. His gaze was cold and filled with arrogance. When the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, it was filled with endless disdain. It's you guys who are too weak, the young man said. We killed our enemies with our strength, but you used heavenly tribulations to kill our people. Using the heavenly tribulation to kill enemies is also a matter of strength. Jiang Chun raised his eyebrows and said, If you are not convinced, you can also use the heavenly tribulation to kill enemies. Of course, Jiang Chun was only joking and teasing the other party. The main reason was that none of the disciples of the Flourishing Age Academy had become a titled deity. Even if they had become a titled deity, they might not be a match for this young man. Jiang Chun had been talking all this time, but in fact, he was stalling for time. He wanted to wait for the gray-haired old man to appear. Perhaps this matter could be suppressed. Otherwise, today's matter would be difficult to deal with. However, since the young man arrived, the gray-haired old man had not appeared for more than 30 breaths. This made Jiang Chun quite puzzled. Was he not in the academy? Then, since the gray-haired old man was not here, the 4 mentors would be in charge of the academy. Why are you talking nonsense with him? Just kill him. The elder of the Poison God Temple was as straightforward as ever, not caring about the so-called rules. However, the descendant of the Clear Sky God Emperor hurriedly stopped him and said with a serious expression, This is the rule set by the Heavenly Edge and the Clear Sky clan. Broken rules. The elder of the poison god temple looked very ugly. Poisonous fog rose from his body, and he couldn't wait to attack. However, in the end, he restrained himself. This is difficult. Jiangchen frowned and looked at the 40 disciples of the Flourishing Age Academy. None of them had become a titled deity. Who will fight? Boss, I will fight. Wakako walked over and said seriously, if I fight, I might become a titled deity. There is no maybe. If you fight, you will die. Jiangchen said in a low voice. This is not a game. But who can fight now? Are we going to let this brat run wild in front of the academy? Wakako said. Jiangchen heard this and felt a headache coming. The elder of the poison god temple, the descendant of the clear sky god emperor, and Yu Guang's faces darkened. At this moment, a group of people appeared on a mountain not far away from the Flourishing Age Academy. They were wearing the same robes, and each of them had a strong aura. However, at this moment, they were looking at them with a mocking expression. The disciples of the Glittering Age Academy. What are they doing here? Everyone was puzzled, but soon they understood the purpose of this group of people. Oh? You are blocked at the entrance, and don't dare to fight? Sure enough, the Flourishing Age Academy is not good. It is just a little famous. Ha ha ha, this is so funny. The Flourishing Age Academy has 40 disciples, but there is not a single titled deity. This is really a disgrace to the 9th heaven divine realm. The group of people from the Glittering Age Academy mocked. Among them, a young man took a step forward and said jokingly, why don't I help the Flourishing Age Academy? This young man was also a titled deity, and he had reached the upper level. The aura he exuded was extremely strong, and it was not weaker than the young man from the Great Thousand World. However, as soon as the young man finished speaking, the young man from the Great Thousand World narrowed his eyes and looked at him from the corner of his eyes. He said softly, You! Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud explosion. No one saw how the young man from the Great Thousand World attacked. They only saw the titled deity from the Glittering Age Academy fly backward. Blood splattered along the way, and his physical body was broken into pieces while flying backward. He was trying his best to gather his divine power, trying to rebuild his physical body. Bang! However, in the next moment, there was another explosion. A sword ray, which seemed to have crossed several large states and came from the sky, directly slashing the soul of the titled deity from the Glittering Age Academy. You are just a cat or a dog, an ant. At this moment, the young man from the Great Thousand World returned to his original place. He looked at the group of people from the Glittering Age Academy with contempt and said, If you want to watch, then watch. Don't annoy me like a fly. The group of people from the Glittering Age Academy fell silent, and they did not even dare to breathe loudly. Their faces were full of shock, and they could not believe that their own titled deity had been killed in an instant by the other party. Chapter 963. Everyone was shocked. They could not imagine why this would happen. They were both titled deities and had used the titles bestowed by the heavens. Why could they not withstand one move from the other party? For a moment, the group of people from the Linlang Academy did not dare to make a sound. They stood there in a daze and did not even dare to breathe loudly. On the other side, the disciples of the Glory World Academy also held their breaths. That was because the other party was too strong and intimidating. At this moment, the young man from the great wide world narrowed his eyes and looked at Jiangchen and the others. He said disdainfully, What? You dare to do it but don't dare to admit it? I said that I killed them, Jiangchen said softly. They accidentally entered my heavenly tribulation. Do you think I can believe you? The young man said coldly. The contempt in his eyes was not concealed at all. Then, he stepped into the mountain gate of the Glory World Academy and walked toward the central palace step by step. His posture was tall and straight, and divine rings surrounded his body. He was like a young divine king. Wherever he passed, flowers bloomed under his feet, and divine light fell from above his head. He was extraordinary and insufferably arrogant. After more than 10 breaths, when he walked to the central palace of the Glory World Academy, his aura had reached its peak. At this moment, he sneered and said, "Do any of you want to fight?" For a moment, the entire place was silent. No one dared to say a word. Of course, Wakako wanted to fight, but he was stopped by Jiangchen. "Is this all you've got?" The young man became more and more arrogant. He glanced at everyone with contempt, then stretched out a finger and waved it in front of everyone. He said, "No, you're too weak. You're too arrogant." At this moment, Jiangchen took a step forward. His expression was stern, and the divine power in his body was surging. Like a tsunami, rumbling sounds kept coming from Jiangchen's body as if there were endless waves crashing. "Arrogant? So what? What can you do to me?" the young man said disdainfully. "You're just an ant in my eyes." "Ant?" Jiangchen suddenly laughed and said, It's a pity that an ant like me is different." Without waiting for the other party to reply, killing intent surfaced in Jiangchen's eyes as he said coldly, "If you leave now, you can still live." "Oh? What? You want to bully the weak?" The young man sneered and said, "The burial ground is wary of our great thousand worlds, so they set a rule that the strong cannot bully the weak. Even the strongest experts of the burial ground are afraid. What dignity does the burial ground have left?" Sigh. Jiangchen let out a sigh after hearing this. Then, he slowly took a few steps forward with a helpless look in his eyes. "Born at the wrong time? I think it should be a kind of responsibility." Jiangchen sighed softly. "Since no one will protect the dignity of the ninth heaven divine realm, then let me try." "You? Ha! You must be joking." The young man laughed wildly, but before he could finish, his expression suddenly turned serious. Jiangchen formed a seal with both hands, and talisman sank into the void. The shadow of a dragon appeared behind him, and a tiger condensed in front of him. There was even a sky full of brilliance that flew over from afar. At this moment, the expressions of everyone in the sky reaching school froze. They saw that the spirit body that Jiangchen left here had actually flown away. At the same time, the spirit bodies that Jiangchen had shed during this period of time in the Glory World Academy also turned into streams of light and flew out of the West Hall. "Don't want perfection, just a moment of pleasure," Jiangchen said softly. He had already decided to fuse all the spirit bodies at this moment. This was not what he wanted. After all, the spirit bodies had not shed 3,000 spirit bodies. At this moment, the sky-reaching cannon could not be cultivated to perfection at all. However, as he said, he did not want perfection. Being bullied to the point of being humiliated was related to the dignity of the entire ninth heaven. He did not want to continue enduring. So what if it was not perfect? A moment of pleasure was enough. Little junior brother, according to little junior brother's cultivation speed, the spirit bodies that he has shed now should be around 2,500. He is still about 500 away from the lowest level of perfection. Inside the sky-reaching school, Luo Shu and the others were very puzzled. They did not know why Jiangchen suddenly wanted to fuse with the spirit bodies. One had to know that once the spirit bodies fused, there was no possibility of shedding the spirit bodies. At that time, Jiangchen's realm would be flawed. His future achievements, and even his path would have a big problem. This is his decision. Katsura Matsuda stood in front of the main hall and looked into the distance, as if he could see what was happening in the Glory World Academy. At this moment, in the sky of the Glory World Academy, the divine light that filled the sky fell, turning into wisps of light that fell into Jiangchen's body. His body was crying, like a bell being rung, the sound reverberating in all directions. His aura was also constantly soaring, from a lower true God all the way to a profound God. In the end, he was only one step away from becoming a god. However, many people could see that although Jiangchen's aura had soared, his realm was still that of a lower true God. What's going on? Did he use some kind of forbidden technique? His aura has increased by a lot, but his realm hasn't changed. Just as everyone was puzzled, the divine light that filled the sky disappeared, and Jiang Chen's aura was fixed at the profound God realm. At this moment, he sighed softly. In the end, it's not perfect. Your aura is very strong, but unfortunately, you're only a lower true God. The youth said disdainfully. Why? Do you think you can fight me like this? No. Jiang Chen shook his head and said, I'm not fighting you, I'm suppressing you. You, the youth said disdainfully. You're not enough. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, an explosion suddenly sounded. At this moment, everyone was shocked to discover that the youth from the upper-class world was actually sent flying. Blood splattered along the way, and the divine ring on his body dimmed a lot. At the same time, everyone also saw that Jiang Chen's figure had unknowingly disappeared from where he was. What happened? Cries of surprise rang out one after another, but then a dragon's roar drowned out everyone's voices. Looking over, they saw that Jiang Chen had unknowingly rushed in front of the youth, his left hand condensing a dragon seal fist light, and his right hand blooming a rose. Both fists struck out horizontally, like two resplendent suns falling, one left and one right, striking the youth's chest and back. You're courting death. Although this youth was injured, he was still very strong. His reaction was extremely fast, instantly stabilizing his figure, and then he pushed out with his palm. The palm print was resplendent, as if a river of stars had broken through the void, suppressing Jiang Chen. The upper-class world, you underestimate my ninth heaven divine realm too much. Jiang Chen was fearless, his hands forming seals, and obscure runes erupted. In a few breaths of time, the runes gathered and turned into 3 sharp swords, bobbing up and down in front of Jiang Chen. Forbidden technique, slaying 3 lives! Boom! Accompanied by a few explosions, a sharp sword slashed out horizontally, shattering the palm print that was like a river of stars. Then, the second sword turned into a blood-red dragon, breaking through the void. Chapter 964. The blood-red dragon roared and split the void. In an instant, it landed in front of the young man. Boom! With an explosion, the blood-red dragon hit the young man's body. Red ripples spread out, and the ear-piercing sound of collision was heard. Crack! A few breaths later, everyone's expression froze as they heard a cracking sound. Looking carefully, they saw that the protective divine power outside the young man's body had been cut open by the sword. I am a titled deity. I have a title to protect me, the young man roared. Above his head, an ancient human character appeared. A human-level title! No wonder he could defeat the disciple of the Linlang Academy in a second! Many people exclaimed. A human-level title was extraordinary. It was ranked 3rd among all the titles. Titled deities, as their names suggested, had their own titles. Every title was different, but they could be roughly divided into 5 levels. From the bottom to the top, they were mortal, human, spiritual, earth, and heaven. Under normal circumstances, even those with outstanding talents could only get a mortal title when they became titled deities. Only a small number of evildoers could get a human title. Don't underestimate the difference of one level. A mortal title was nothing in front of a human title. The power of the Great Way contained in the 2 titles was like heaven and earth. As for the spiritual, earth, and heaven titles, they were even rarer. Especially the heaven title, since ancient times, only a few people could get it. Even those who were known as the strongest of their time did not necessarily have the title of heaven. Therefore, when a human-level titled deity appeared, it would inevitably cause a stir. However, what happened next made the crowd start to wonder if this human-level title was too weak. Jiang Chen threw his sword over for the 3rd time. A silvery white radiance appeared. It looked like a crescent moon, sweeping across everything. His speed was extremely fast, and there wasn't even the sound of it tearing through the air as it slashed onto the youth's body. Boom! Along with a few explosions, the young man's body shook violently, and the human character above his head was broken. Then, without waiting for him to react, Jiangchen took a step forward, clenched his left hand into a fist, and punched the top of his head. Puff! With a muffled bang, the top of the youth's head exploded and his soul escaped into the distance. His face was filled with fear, and even his soul was trembling. He couldn't imagine how a lower true divinity could cultivate to have such combat strength. It was too terrifying. Since I've been defeated, then, the slaughter will begin today. Jiangchen spoke softly as he struck out with his right hand, and it was like a millstone that caused waves of ripples to appear in space. Whoosh! In the next moment, a cold light streaked across the sky, and the young man's soul shattered like fireworks. I'll leave you with a wisp of remnant soul. Go back and tell your companions that my ninth heaven divine world cannot be bullied, Jiangchen said coldly. Looking at the wisp of soul under the fireworks, a sharp killing intent flashed in his eyes. That wisp of remnant soul let out a series of ear-piercing sounds. It was either cursing Jiangchen or screaming in pain. Clearly, although this young man was afraid, he was also resentful. You're just a remnant soul, and you're still barking? Then stay, Jiangchen said coldly. A ray of cold light shot out from his fingertip, and it was like a ray that could break the sky. It killed the young man's last wisp of remnant soul. At this point, a god with a mortal class title had fallen. At this moment, the surroundings were silent, and no one spoke. Everyone was moved, and their hearts were filled with shock. This was a real monster. A lower true divinity who killed a mortal class title god. This battle was enough to go down in history. Even the elders of the Poison God Temple and the descendants of the Clear Sky God Emperor were dumbfounded. They had lived for tens of thousands of years, and they had seen tyrannical and fierce people, but they had never seen such a fierce person. If this kind of person grew up, how powerful would he be in the future? Wouldn't he have the final say in this world? What a pity you've broken your cultivation. After a few breaths, the elder of the Poison God Temple sighed and said, I know a little about the sky-reaching sacred scripture of the sky-reaching cult. You've forcefully merged with it before you've shed your spiritual body. Your realm is no longer perfect and flawless. Now that you've broken your cultivation, your future path will be difficult. The descendants of the Clear Sky God Emperor also sighed, feeling pity for Jiangchen. Hearing this, Jiangchen shrugged indifferently and said with a smile, It doesn't matter. 2,600 spiritual bodies are enough. Actually, it's fine if you don't fight today, Yu Guangming said. After all, this is the Flourishing Age Academy, and the experts of the vast thousand domains have not arrived yet. If I don't fight, my face will be damaged, Jiangchen said in a low voice. His eyes flickered. He said, Don't we live for our dignity? Puff! As soon as he finished speaking, Jiangchen's face suddenly turned pale. He spat out a mouthful of blood, accompanied by a stench, and rotten fragments of the great Tao. This was the damage to his foundation. You fused with them forcefully, and you started a fight in a hurry. The aura in your body is in a mess, and as the great doctrine's forces collided, your foundation will probably be destroyed. The Poison Divine Hall's elder looked at Jiangchen, and he saw through Jiangchen's current state at a glance. Jiangchen's body was trembling. He did not expect things to turn out like this. However, it was too late to say anything now. Moreover, Jiangchen had no regrets. I'll go into seclusion, Jiangchen spoke softly. He didn't pay attention to anyone and entered the West Hall alone. He activated the formation and isolated everyone from the outside world. If he has no worries with the Poison God Temple, I can help him, the elder of the Poison God Temple said, then shook his head and sighed. What a pity! My clan has encountered some problems recently, and I can't help him. The descendant of the Clear Sky God Emperor smiled bitterly. However, as a clan of the God Emperor, their foundation was very deep. Perhaps they could heal Jiangchen with a wave of their hand. The descendant of the Clear Sky God Emperor said this because he did not want to help Jiangchen. Everyone present was well aware of what he was thinking. Senior Yu, boss is half a son-in-law of the Moon Clan. You! Shao Qingyi looked at Yu Guang with a hint of pleading in his eyes. Can you help, boss? No. Yu Guang's face darkened, and he said angrily. The Moon Clan has not settled the score with him yet. Wakako and the others' faces turned ugly when they heard this. They did not know how serious Jiang Chen's injuries were, but they knew that once his foundation was destroyed, his cultivation would be destroyed at best, and he would die at worst. Now, the only ones who could help Jiang Chen were these three forces. Of course, if the World's Edge was willing to help, there would be no problem. However, the gray-haired elder had disappeared. As for Zi Shao, why would such a creature care about the life of a lower true god? Chapter 965. Everyone could see that Jiang Chen's injuries were severe, and his life was in danger. However, there weren't many people who could help Jiang Chen at this moment. Everyone was worried. If Jiang Chen couldn't survive this time, then all their previous efforts would be in vain. He's a hero in life and a hero in death, the elder of the Poison God Temple said with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Who asked him to be so stubborn? My boss is doing this for the dignity of the ninth heaven divine world, Jianglu said coldly. How dare a mere junior speak like that? The Poison God Hall elder's face darkened as he threatened. Don't think that I won't dare to do anything to you just because you're a disciple of the Glory World Academy. Try moving. At this moment, Hun Gang walked out with a hint of sternness in his eyes. After this period of recuperation and cultivation, Hun Gang's complexion was obviously much better. The blood qi in his body was much more abundant, and his cultivation had improved a lot. Even his hair was slowly turning black. His originally thin body was now a little fuller, and the turbidity in his eyes had disappeared by a lot. At this moment, he stood in front of Jianglu and the others, staring at the Poison God Hall elder and saying coldly, Have you ever seen extreme ascension? The moment these words came out, the Poison God Hall elder instantly shut his mouth, and a trace of fear appeared in the depths of his eyes. He knew what Hun Gang meant. Today, he wanted to protect Jianglu and the others. If he ascended to the extreme and burned his own Dao fruit to fight, his battle strength would probably be able to easily kill a godly king. The elder of the Poison God Hall was naturally afraid of this. After grumbling for a while, he returned to his palace. Senior boss. Wakako looked at Hun Gang. At this moment, the domineering aura on his body disappeared, and he was rather respectful. It was only because he was worried about Jiang Chen that he could lower his will and anger. Everyone present also understood that perhaps only this Hun Gang senior who had lived for tens of thousands of years could help Jiang Chen. However, to everyone's disappointment, Hun Gang shook his head and sighed. His cultivation technique hasn't reached perfection yet. Forcefully fusing with the spirit body can be considered a failure. Then what will happen? Bai Fengyu's eyes were slightly red, her words filled with worry. If it was only breaking his cultivation, that would be a small matter. However, the crucial point is that he attacked at the instant of the fusion. Chaos Gang whispered. After fusing with the spirit body, the power in his body became too violent. Instead of suppressing it and balancing it, he directly attacked. The recoil injured his foundation. Old man, cut the crap. We all understand what you're saying. Shao Qingyi's face darkened. I'm asking you now. What should we do? Leave it to fate. Chaos Gang didn't argue with Shao Qingyi. He pointed at the top of his head and said, Some people are born to be kings while others become bandits. Although fate can change, the great Tao is formless and can't be touched. So it's all up to boss? Wakako asked. You can say that. Hong Kong let out a long sigh. He looked into the distance and whispered, When did this world become like this? At the same time, in the West Hall. After Jiang Chen returned to the West Palace, his body kept twitching. His soul and divine soul kept flickering like a candle in the wind, about to be extinguished at any moment. Cracks the size of a thumb appeared on his body. Blood kept spurting out, and there were even pieces of flesh and broken bones scattered all over the ground. His foundation was destroyed. It was as if a pillar had collapsed. He couldn't hold on any longer. If it weren't for the 3 wisps of chaotic energy, and the myriad change heavenly lamp, Jiangchen would have died long ago. At this moment, his injuries were getting more and more serious. The divine power in Jiangchen's body was almost gone, and even his consciousness was gradually blurring. If this continued, Jiangchen would definitely die. In the end, I still have this 9 firmaments in my heart, Jiangchen whispered bitterly. He felt helpless, but he didn't regret it. He knew his own heart and what he wanted. After his rebirth, not only did he want to take back everything he had in the past, not only did he want to take revenge, but he also wanted to protect this 9 firmaments. It was the same as when he was Tianqin Divine King. At that time, he established the Tenchin Shinzo and set the rules with the various forbidden areas to not disturb the world. What he wanted was actually very simple. He just wanted to see the living beings of the world live peacefully. And what he wanted to do was also very simple. He wanted to do what he could do to the best of his ability. In Jiangchen's heart, he had lost the memories of his previous lives, but the memories of Tianqin Divine King's life were still there. He had always felt that since he was a Divine King, he had to have the heart to protect the world. This was the Tao in his heart. It was a pity that for the Tao in his heart, Jiangchen broke his cultivation. He couldn't bear to see the 9 firmaments divine world being humiliated, and he couldn't bear to see the living beings of the greater 1,000 world, who thought they were high and mighty in the 9 firmaments divine world. Therefore, he chose to break his cultivation and attack. However, he had never thought that his actions this time would actually bring him so much trouble. Why do you have to do this? The undying bird Tao soul plate was in the depths of Jiangchen's soul, and it was also very weak. After all, the doctrine soul and Jiangchen were the same body. Jiangchen was dying, and so was the immortal bird, who was the doctrine's soul. Even the emperor's vine was about to wither. It had turned from a vine that covered the sky to a palm-sized, withered weed. What's the point of you doing so much? Will the world remember you? More people will say that you're not good enough and think that you're overestimating yourself. Jiangchen felt a chill run down his spine. His heart turned cold. But Jiangchen didn't have any complaints. This was the world. It was cold and heartless. But Jiangchen's heart had never been cold and heartless. No matter what people said, Jiangchen only had to believe in the one in his heart. Think of something. I'm dying. Jiangchen's voice was weak. He was lying on the ground, and pus was forming all over his body. His flesh was rotting, his bones were cracking, and his soul was dimming. His cultivation base continued to drop, dropping from the lower true God realm all the way down to the level of a rank 1 mortal. Your foundation is broken. It's like a bucket. When there's a hole at the bottom, the water in the bucket will leak out continuously. Now, the only way is to block that hole, said the undying bird Tao soul. Jiangchen rolled his eyes helplessly when he heard this. He understood the logic, but the key was how to fix the hole in the foundation. The foundation was formed by the fruit of Tao, and it was formed by the great Tao. How could he find it? And how could he fix it? Wait for death? After a few breaths, Jiangchen was really helpless. His consciousness was fading, and he was about to fall asleep. He murmured and mocked himself. That's it. For the 9 heavens? Yes, for the 9 heavens, we 3 Tao souls have to disappear with you. The undying bird Tao soul smiled bitterly and said, I thought I could reach a new height this time, or even revert to my ancestors and become an ancestor-level Tao soul. I didn't expect. Chapter 966. The immortal bird Tao Hun was still unwilling to give up. It activated its inextinguishable fire, trying to fill the hole in Jiangchen's foundation. However, it was to no avail. The emperor's vine swayed beside his soul. It was withered and yellow, about to wither. Even the light in the ever-changing heavenly lamp dimmed, as if it was about to be extinguished. At this moment, Jiangchen was in complete despair. His foundation had been destroyed, and no one could help him. The only one who could help him was himself. But now, he had no other choice. He was too impulsive this time, but Jiang Qin did not regret it. Even if the sky falls, there will be a tall man watching over it. It's not a big deal if I'm one less person in the world. Jiang Qin smiled bitterly. Qi! Suddenly, a flame burned in the depths of Jiang Qin's soul. The flame grew hotter and hotter, accompanied by surging and pure energy, instantly filled Jiang Qin's entire body. Even his divine spirit and soul were covered with a layer of flame similar to the divine light. In an instant, Jiang Qin felt warm all over, as if he was bathing in the spring breeze. Even his foundation was recovering rapidly. At this moment, Jiang Qin was stunned. He did not know what had happened to him. What was with the flame in the depths of his soul? It's this! After a dozen breaths, Jiang Qin's consciousness gradually recovered. He saw a drop of red blood burning in the depths of his soul. In his mind, Jiang Qin recalled what happened in the ancient sky passage ruins in the godless mainland. At that time, he entered the ancient sky passage ruins and met an old man who was sweeping a grave. Then, he had a big dream. In the end, he erected a monument for a deity named Ever-Changing, and obtained a drop of his blood essence. That was the inheritance of Ever-Changing. However, from then on, Jiang Qin rarely paid attention to this drop of blood essence. This drop of blood essence had always been calm and rarely changed. As time passed, Jiang Qin almost forgot that there was such a drop of blood essence in his soul. What was even more unexpected to him was that when he was in despair, it was actually this drop of blood essence that actually helped him and pulled him back from the brink of death. At this moment, the blood essence was burning. The power of the Great Path was like a stream, slowly washing Jiang Qin's body and even his soul. His injuries were slowly getting better, and even his foundation was almost completely healed. This blood essence is so powerful! Jiang Qin was shocked and even more excited. It was as if he had been reborn, from death to life. He looked at the drop of burning essence blood, and his eyes suddenly became absent-minded. Amidst the raging flames, he seemed to be able to see images appearing within the blood essence. Upon closer inspection, it was an azure heaven and earth. Tens of thousands of deities stood there, overlooking all living beings. Then, the scene suddenly changed. Deities fell from the sky like meteors and disappeared in the sky. This was a great battle. The auras emitted by the deities were extremely terrifying. Even the great Tao was trembling under their feet. However, Jiang Qin couldn't see what living beings these deities were fighting with. He only saw deities falling continuously. After a long time, the azure heaven and earth turned blood-red. Corpses and bones were everywhere on the ground, and rotten flesh was floating in the sky. Divine rings disappeared one by one, and divine sparks shattered one by one. In the end, only a blood-stained man was left standing in the sky, holding a broken spear. In front of him, there was a ravine, like a natural moat, as if something was cut off. Behind him, there was an ancient city. The sound of chanting came from the city, and rays of holy light sprinkled down and blessed the man. That's the eternal fortress! Jiang Qin was shocked. That ancient city was clearly the eternal fortress. He couldn't be wrong. Then, the scene in this scene was the battlefield outside the eternal fortress. A foreign battlefield. When did this happen? Jiang Qin frowned. At that time, the heaven and earth were azure. At that time, the eternal fortress was even more magnificent, and had never been broken through. It's not a foreign living being? After a dozen breaths, Jiang Qin saw a living being coming from outside the natural moat. He couldn't see the appearance of that living being, but his general appearance was no different from that of a human. Moreover, this person didn't have the aura of a foreign living being. The deities in the sky have all died. Only you are left. That living being walked over. His body shone with boundless light, as if he was the center of this world. The stars in the surroundings rotated, and the sun shone resplendently. There were even great Tao runes that formed battle clothes and draped them over his body. One person is enough. The man with the broken spear spoke. His voice was actually very familiar to Jiang Chen. However, Jiang Chen couldn't remember clearly. He had forgotten what happened in the past. Everything will return to the origin. The world will be the same, and the burial ground can't transcend, the living being said. He pointed at the heaven and earth and said, "Look, everything is about to end. What are you still holding on for?" "I'm just holding on to my thoughts," the man with the spear said softly. Then, the man suddenly attacked. The two of them fought fiercely and finally fell into the natural moat. The scene seemed to have frozen. Time seemed to have frozen. After an unknown period of time, the man with the broken spear walked out of the natural moat. His body was covered in blood. His head seemed to have been cut open, and his body was almost shattered. He used the spear as a walking stick and walked unsteadily in the direction of Eternal City. At this moment, a pleasant sound rang out in the world. It was as if heaven and earth were playing music, wishing this man a victorious return. The living beings in Eternal City were also cheering. Their voices shook the heavens. Hypocritical! Why do I need you to congratulate me on this day? However, what Jiang Chen didn't expect was that the man stared at the sky and then threw the broken spear in his hand. The spear sank into the endless sky and seemed to have hit something. Then, the blue sky suddenly turned blood red. Immediately after, a blood-red bolt of lightning descended and struck the man. Blood dyed his hair red. The blood-red lightning drowned him. After a long time, the man destroyed the lightning but also fell to the ground. At this moment, the scene was dim and blurry, as if it was about to disappear. At the last moment, Jiang Chen saw an old man in a Taoist robe appear. He came in front of the man and carried him on his back. Then, he broke into the void and disappeared. However, the moment the man disappeared, Jiang Chen's heart palpitated. He saw the man's gaze. He was actually staring at him. Could it be that they were looking at each other across time and space? Or could it be that the man already knew that at some point in the future, there would be such a person who would see the battle back then? Jiang Chen was shocked. To be able to know the future, this kind of living being's methods had already reached the heavens. "I will return!" Finally, the scene disappeared. Vaguely, the man's angry roar could be heard. It was filled with unwillingness and anger. At the same time, the drop of blood essence burned out. Jiang Chen's injuries and foundation were also healed. Chapter 967. This was beyond Jiang Chen's expectations. He had never thought that a drop of blood essence could pull him back from the brink of death. At this moment, Jiang Chen was conscious. He sat cross-legged on the ground, and the divine power in his body surged like a roaring tsunami. After his injuries were healed and his blood essence was burned up, there was still a part of the power flowing in his body. Under this power, Jiang Chen felt that his body had turned into a furnace, tempering his Tao fruit. At the same time, he was also absorbing this pure and mysterious power. Half a day later, Jiang Chen's body emitted flames. Roses bloomed around him, and the shadow of a winged dragon appeared behind him. Below him, a tiger lay down, and the roar of the tiger shook the sky. Especially his spine, which was glowing and filled with divine light, emitting a vigorous aura of life. His spine seemed to be sentient, and had a life of its own. When his body gently twisted, a vast power erupted from his spine. At the same time, the words of the roses bloomed on his ribs and finally gathered, turning into a gorgeous and swaying flower. The dragon and tiger's shadows suddenly merged at this moment. Then, with a flash of light, ripples spread out. The swaying rose blossomed and absorbed the illusory image of the two fused together. Then, the petals closed, sucking in the two silhouettes and turning them into a bud. This is... Jiang Chen was puzzled. His heart throbbed, and he had an inexplicable feeling. He had not cultivated the heavenly canon to perfection, which meant that the dragon vein was incomplete, and his foundation was flawed. But now, it seemed different. The rose formed by the tiger bone bloomed and absorbed the dragon vein, merging with the tiger's shadow. As the two merged, Jiangqun could feel that the dragon vein seemed to have changed. Moreover, in these few breaths, Jiang Chen's body swelled with pain. Then, his body exploded, and a spirit body was shed. I've already broken my cultivation. How can I still shed my spirit body? Jiang Chen was shocked, but more than that, he was pleasantly surprised. Half a day later, Jiang Chen understood what was going on. The heavenly canon and the tiger soul art came from the same source. After the heavenly canon was broken, the tiger soul art used it to repair the spirit vein cultivated by the heavenly canon. The two were interconnected, and the dragon and tiger would exist forever. Does this mean that I didn't break my cultivation? You can still shed your spirit body? Jiang Chen was excited. In the following period of time, Jiang Chen continued his seclusion and used the power of the tiger soul to nourish the dragon vein. The two of them accompanied each other, and his spirit body was constantly receding. At the same time, because he had taken that step and fused with all the spirits, Jiang Chen's cultivation level had finally increased. In a short 10 days, Jiang Chen leaped up from a lower true god, charging into an upper true god. At this moment, Jiang Chen could feel his own strength. With a raise of his hand, he seemed to be able to shake this part of the world. After fusing with the spiritual body, I was already able to easily subdue titled deities who were at the level of killing, Jiang Chen said softly. Now, following the breakthrough in my realm, my strength should have increased by quite a lot. However, Jiang Chen would never think that with his current strength, he would be able to contend with a spirit-grade titled deity. One had to know that the difference of one level in a titled deity was huge. Jiang Chen could easily subdue a spirit-grade titled deity, but it did not mean that he could subdue a spirit-grade titled deity. Perhaps now, he could barely fight with a spirit-grade titled deity, or even be at a disadvantage. However, this was enough for Jiang Chen. He could still reseed his spirit body, and his cultivation level could also begin to increase. In time, his combat strength would soar to a terrifying level. Boss has been in seclusion for 10 days, and there's no movement at all. The West Hall has set up a formation, and I can't sense Boss's aura. He couldn't have. During these 10 days, Jiang Chen had gained a lot from his seclusion in the West Hall. But outside the West Hall, Jiang Lu and the others were worried until their hair turned white. A group of people had been waiting outside the West Hall, and their eyes were filled with worry. Why aren't the Poison God Temple and the Clear Sky God Emperor's clan willing to help Boss? Jiang Lu asked. When these words came out, Bai Fingyu and the others glanced at Jiang Lu as if they were looking at an idiot. It's not like you haven't seen Boss's talent, and his combat strength is so terrifying. If Boss is allowed to grow, do you think there will be any deity emperors in the Nine Heavens divine world in the future? Wakako said unhappily. But Boss only took action for the Nine Heavens divine world, Jiang Lu said. No one is as good as Boss Ji. Shao Qingyi sighed. This is the way of the world. Why don't we go in and see Boss? Jiang Lu muttered. Buzz, at this moment, the West Hall's formation disappeared, and then the gate of the West Hall slowly opened. Jiang Chen appeared in front of everyone with a smile on his face. Boss! Boss! Are you okay? Everyone rushed over, especially Bai Fingyu and the other two. Their hands and feet moved together, and they touched Jiang Chen's body. Jiang Chen's old face turned red, and he coughed lightly. He said seriously, What are you doing? Don't touch me blindly. Master, you're okay? Bai Fingyu blinked her eyes, and her eyes were slightly red. She hadn't had a good rest these few days. Nayland Mayer and Hua Liani were the same. At this moment, they were hugging Jiang Chen's arm, unwilling to let go. They were deeply afraid of losing Jiang Chen. Okay, I'm fine, Jiang Chen said. Consider it a blessing in disguise. Boss, but you broke your cultivation, Jiang Lu said softly. Is this really okay? When these words came out, everyone's expression became serious. They still didn't know that Jiang Chen hadn't broken his cultivation, so they began to worry about Jiang Chen's future. One must know that after breaking his cultivation, it was equivalent to crippling his cultivation. Jiang Chen's cultivation path from now on would be broken. Look at all of your expressions. Is your boss so weak? Jiang Chen said unhappily. Even if the world is broken, your boss won't be broken. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, before Jiang Chen had time to explain, a booming sound suddenly came from outside the gate of the Flourishing Age Academy. Looking carefully, a young man in white was standing outside the gate, and his feet were stepping on the gate plate of the Xingshi Academy. It's someone from the Great Thousand World again! Jiang Chen's eyes narrowed. He pulled away Nayland Mayer and Hualiani's hands, and then his figure flashed and appeared in front of the gate. Boss! Don't be impulsive! Jiang Lu and the others exclaimed. Jiang Chen's injury had just recovered, and he needed to rest. He couldn't fight. However, what shocked them was that when Jiang Chen arrived in front of the gate, he didn't say a word and directly slapped him. The young man from the Great Thousand World didn't even have the strength to resist, and was directly suppressed by Jiang Chen's slap. Then, Jiang Chen's foot fell, shattering the young man's body and obliterating his soul. Creatures from the Great Thousand World, do you have a bad memory? 10 days ago, you just killed a mortal-level titled deity, and 10 days later, you're here to deliver another one? Jiang Chen joked. He looked up at the sky and gave the group of creatures from the outside world a middle finger. Chapter 968. Is he provoking us? What a lowly ant! When we arrive at the burial ground, we will destroy everything. Outside the world, a group of creatures was furious. They were so powerful that even the top powerhouses of the ninth heaven had to be wary of them. But now, they were being mocked by a young man. Especially that middle finger, it was too glaring. Where did this kid come from? 10 days ago, he was a lower true god, and he could easily kill a human-grade titled deity. Now, in just 10 days, his cultivation has reached the upper true god level? This kid is strange. Could he be that old monster in disguise? Everyone was suspicious. They did not believe that a true god cultivator had such combat strength. Even the top geniuses of the Great Thousand World were not so terrifying. They suspected that Jiang Chen was most likely a powerful man in disguise to kill the geniuses of the Great Thousand World. If they dared to cheat, then... Red Lotus Venerable's face was gloomy, and a wisp of flame rushed into the ninth heaven divine world. Obviously, he was going to investigate Jiang Chen. But soon, a wisp of his divine thought came back. How is it? Someone asked. He is indeed a true god. He is not a powerful man in disguise. Red Lotus Venerable looked at the people around him and asked, In the Great Thousand World, are there any geniuses who can stand shoulder to shoulder with this kid? As soon as this question came out, everyone fell silent, and they were all quite embarrassed. It was only because they thought about it carefully. Even the best geniuses in the Great Thousand World wouldn't be a match for Jiang Chen if they were in the same state. A true god cultivator suppressing a human-grade titled deity. Who could do that? Interesting. Red Lotus Venerable said in a deep voice. This person cannot be left alive. Send a spiritual titled deity down there and kill him. What if a spiritual titled deity is no match for him? Someone muttered. What are you thinking? No matter how strong he is, the true god realm will always be the true god realm. How can he kill a spiritual titled deity? According to my estimation, his combat strength should only be able to kill a human-grade titled deity. Finally, everyone came to an agreement. Then, they gave the order to send out the spirit-grade titled deities to fight. At this moment, Jiang Chen had returned to the central palace. He looked at Jiang Lu and the others with a serious expression and said, You all should cultivate in seclusion. Boss, did you have a premonition? Ruo Xiao asked. The great wide world will not let this matter rest. Jiang Chen said seriously. I'll hold them off for now. You guys go into seclusion and improve your cultivation as soon as possible. But you are alone, Hualiani whispered. She didn't hide the worry in her voice. At the same time, they were furious. In such a large academy, other than them, none of the other disciples had made a move. But when he thought about it carefully, he couldn't blame those disciples. After all, out of the 40 disciples of the Flourishing Age Academy, none of them had the title of God. Even if they wanted to fight, they did not have the strength to do so. Then let's go into seclusion. Wakako was very straightforward. With our cultivation, it's useless even if we stay here. Why don't we go into seclusion? Yes, our cultivation is too low. After all, it's a shortcoming. Everyone sighed. They didn't have Jiang Chen's terrifying combat strength, so they couldn't fight back. They could only improve their cultivation. In the end, they entered the West Hall and went into seclusion. What's the use of going into seclusion now? How many of you can become a titled god in a short time? Even if you do, so what? At most, you'll be a mortal level title. The elder of the Poison God Temple appeared and said with a playful expression, It's useless. How do you know it's useless if you don't try? Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows and stared at the elder of the Poison God Temple. He asked, What about your disciples? How many of them have become titled gods now? The elder of the Poison God Temple was speechless when he heard this. Although he also taught his disciples, it was not so easy to make a breakthrough in cultivation. But soon, he laughed and said, The foundation of the Poison God Temple is so profound that you can't imagine it. Oh? Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows. He didn't understand what the elder of the Poison God Temple meant. The Poison God Temple has been ready for a long time. As long as someone breaks through to become a titled god, we will give him the spiritual clarity grass, the elder of the Poison God Temple said. As soon as he said this, Jiang Chen understood at once, and his eyes flashed with passion. The spiritual clarity grass was a rare treasure of heaven and earth. It contained the will of heaven and the power of blessing. Ordinary people could get a mortal level title if they took the spiritual clarity grass when they stepped into the titled god realm. If one had enough aptitude and talent, one could get a mortal level title after taking the spiritual clarity grass. Look at your West Hall. Do you have such a foundation? You only know how to cultivate blindly. Even if you step into the titled god realm, so what? What's the use of holding a mortal level title or a mortal level title? When you meet the cultivators with mortal level titles in the Great Thousand World, you are like ants. Faced with the ridicule of the elder of the Poison God Temple, Jiang Chen's face darkened. At the same time, he felt a little guilty. Jianglu, Wakako, and the others had recognized him as their boss and followed him from the godless continent to the divine world of the 9 heavens. Bai Fingyu and the others had worshipped him as their master and followed him all the way, going through ups and downs. But thinking about it carefully, Jiang Chen, who was both their boss and their master, did not seem to have brought them any benefits. Other than giving them pointers on cultivation and martial arts at the beginning, Jiang Chen did not give them anything else. Now, Jianglu and the others had reached the most critical stage of their cultivation. If they could get a powerful enough title, Jianglu and the others would have extraordinary achievements in the future. If they only got a mortal level title, then, thinking of this, Jiang Chen's eyes flashed with a trace of disappointment. If it was in his previous life, his Tenchin Shinzo had a deep foundation and enough spiritual clarity grasped to help Jianglu and the others. He did not dare to say anything else, but at least he could guarantee that Jianglu and the others would get a mortal level title or above. But now, do you know why our orthodoxies have been passed down and never lost their glory? It is because our orthodoxies have a deep foundation and can continuously cultivate true geniuses. The elder of the Poison God Temple mocked. And you? What can you do? Hearing this, Jiang Chen was silent for a while. Suddenly, he looked up at the sky and muttered, Then you will suffer the wrath of heaven and bear the sin of heaven. Ha! The elder of the Poison God Temple was dumbfounded. He did not understand why Jiang Chen suddenly said such words. But soon, he understood. It was because the mortal level title deities sent by the Great Thousand World had arrived. and Jiang Chun had also come to fight. Chapter 969. It was the mountain gate of the Flourishing Age Academy and a titled god from the vast thousand world. The plot and the scene were so similar to the previous 2 times. However, it was a little different this time because the person who came this time had a spirit-level title. A dazzling divine halo floated in the sky above his head, and it emanated divine radiance. Moreover, strands of hazy mist coiled around his body, causing him to seem extraordinary and otherworldly. After he came here, before he could speak, Jiang Chun appeared in front of him. Seeing this, the elder of the Poison God Temple was stunned and puzzled. He knew that Jiang Chen's combat power was very strong, but no matter how strong it was, so what? The gap between the realms was like a chasm that was difficult to cross. What's more, the creature who came this time had a spirit-level title. There was only a 1-level difference between a spirit and a human, but the gap between their strength was unimaginable. You're courting death. The elder of the Poison God Temple curled his lips. He had a grudge with Jiang Chen, so of course, he wanted Jiang Chen to be killed. However, on second thought, he felt that it was inappropriate. Now, the only one who could fight in the Flourishing Age Academy was Jiang Chen. If he died, who would be sent out to fight the titled gods of the vast thousand world? Would they let the mentors go out? That was obviously against the rules. Forget it. I'll save you when the time comes. The elder of the Poison God Temple sighed softly. Although he wanted Jiang Chen to be killed, the time was not yet right. None of his disciples had reached the level of a titled god yet. They needed time. And this time could only be bought by Jiang Chen. Are you the one who killed 2 mortal-level titled gods of the vast thousand world? At this moment, the young man stared at Jiang Chen, and his killing intent soared like a strong wind, whistling around him. When his eyes opened and closed, it seemed that the sun and the moon were turning upside down. You're spirit level, right? Jiang Chen asked. It's good that you know, the young man said contemptuously. You've killed the geniuses of the vast thousand world. You're really tired of living. Only you are allowed to kill, and we are not allowed to fight back? Jiang Chen whispered, and the roses around him bloomed. In his soul, the myriad transformations heavenly lamp was already burning with a blazing light. You! The young man opened his mouth again, but before he could finish his sentence, a shocking sword ray shot out from Jiang Chen's forehead. Brightly lit, the sword unsheathed. Time seemed to have frozen, and the young man's expression froze as well. Puff! It wasn't until 3 breaths of time later that a muffled bang resounded. Only then did the young man realize that his protective divine energy had actually been slashed apart by the sword's strike. Furthermore, the power of the title that he was so proud of had been shattered. At this moment, he was no different from an ordinary god. I actually didn't manage to kill him. Jiang Chen was shocked. A full-powered myriad transformations heaven slash was actually only able to break through his opponent's defense. One had to know, in the past, when Jiang Chen displayed the myriad transformations heavenly slash, it was basically one sword one. But now, he couldn't even scratch the other party's skin. Whoosh! At this moment, the young man was even more terrified. He didn't even want to speak and turned to run. He knew very well that his tidal power had been shattered and it would be difficult for him to gather it again in a short period of time. Right now, he was just an ordinary god. Since his opponent could easily shatter his tidal power, it meant that he could easily kill him as well. If he didn't run now, he would only be waiting for his death if he stayed. Since you're here, then stay. Jiang Chen lightly shouted and stretched out his palm, his 5 fingers like chains. Boom! With a loud bang, Jiang Chen's palm came down from the sky. His 5 fingers turned into a cage, and the chains burst forth, imprisoning the young man. Then, Jiang Chen made a seal with one hand. Cryptic runes flickered one after another, and there was also a sound that sounded like the cry of a devil. At this moment, Jiang Chen's body was pitch black, and his eyes were like an abyss. Forbidden technique, soul capture! In the next moment, Jiang Chen lightly shouted, and a black light rushed into the young man's body and went straight into his soul. Then, Jiang Chen's hand went through the air, and it seemed to have penetrated the young man's soul. Come out! Jiang Chen shouted loudly. He pulled his arm abruptly. To his surprise, he pulled his opponent's soul out of Sumi by force. What are you doing? The young man was terrified and quickly gathered his tidal power. But it was too late. After Jiang Chen imprisoned the young man's soul, runes rushed into it, and then separated the young man's tidal power from his soul. Deprive him of his title! Aren't you afraid of the wrath of heaven? The elder of the Poison God Temple exclaimed. The tidal power was bestowed by the heavens, and it had a mark left by the heavens. If one forcibly deprived someone of their title, it would inevitably arouse the wrath of the heavens, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the heavens would punish the person. Moreover, this technique was forbidden and had been banned for a long time. Do you think I haven't crossed enough of the wrath of heaven? Jiang Chen whispered with a solemn expression. That was because Jiang Chen knew that he was definitely not a match for a spirit-grade title deity. Previously, he had taken the initiative by surprise. At this moment, although the young man's soul and title had been taken away, the young man's soul was shaking violently, and a terrifying force was erupting. That was the young man's origin power. At the same time, the tidal power that had been stripped away was shaking, and it was constantly pulling the young man's soul, as if it was about to merge again. You dog! How dare you take away my title? The young man roared and made a series of hand seals. At the same time, he took out a big purple umbrella. Buzz! The big umbrella opened, and a brilliant light formed a domain. In the domain, the power of heaven and earth suddenly erupted, and endless sharp lights shot toward Jiang Chen. Obviously, the young man was panicking and had used his trump card. Damn it! At this moment, Jiang Chen threw away the young man's soul and title, turned around, and returned to the Flourishing Age Academy, and directly activated the protective array. At the same time, the young man had taken back his soul and title power, and he was glaring at Jiang Chen with a face full of anger. A mere true god ant! The young man's face was gloomy, and there was still lingering fear in his heart. He had almost fallen into Jiang Chen's trap. At the critical moment, he did not hesitate to burn his origin power and take out the divine artifact that the Divine King had personally refined. Otherwise, not only would he have been stripped of his tidal power, but even his soul would have been destroyed. A spirit-grade tidal deity is indeed difficult to kill. Jiang Chen frowned. If he had 10 more breaths of time, he could have taken away the young man's tidal power, or even killed him. Unfortunately, the gap between their cultivation was too big. Why did you take away his tidal power? This is a taboo, the elder of the Poison God Temple said in a low voice. Taking away someone's tidal power is the wrath of heaven, and that is not the same as the calamities you have experienced before. I know. Jiang Chen nodded, and there was a trace of helplessness in his words. He said, I just want them to become stronger. Chapter 970. Nowadays, the world was too chaotic. If one's strength was insufficient, they could only go with the flow. Even if they couldn't protect themselves, they would die. Therefore, strength was the only way to survive in this chaotic world. However, Jiang Chen's foundation wasn't deep. It could even be said that he didn't have any foundation. The Tenqing Shinzo he once established was long gone. Now, only his eldest disciple was left. The treasures that he had collected had all been snatched away. Even his sex's mountain gate had been destroyed. He wanted to give Jianglu and the others the best, but with his current conditions, he really couldn't do it. Therefore, Jiang Chen could only find another way. And this method was to seize other people's titles and graft them on Jianglu and the others. This was a forbidden technique that had been banned tens of thousands of years ago. Until now, only a few people could use it. Moreover, this forbidden technique was punished by the heavens. Once used, one would suffer an extremely heavy heavenly punishment. That level of heavenly punishment was destructive. Even Jiang Chen didn't have the confidence to resist it. But he still chose to do it. Just as Jiang Chen said, he wanted Jiang Lu and the others to become stronger. Only by becoming stronger could they survive and not be separated. In this world, there are always some people who think they are righteous. If they know that you use the soul detention forbidden technique, they will definitely make things difficult for you. The elder of Poison God Temple said in a deep voice. At that time, what should you do? What righteous or villain, in my eyes, they are not as important as the people around me, Jiang Chen said coldly. Moreover, what were those so-called righteous people doing now? The creatures of the underworld had descended, and the great thousand worlds were eyeing the ninth heaven divine world covetously. What were those righteous people doing? Hiding, avoiding, treating themselves as if they were blind and deaf, pretending that they couldn't see or hear anything. Was this the righteous people? At this moment, Jiang Chen suddenly found this elder of Poison God Temple more pleasing to the eye. At least when he spoke, he didn't hide anything and spoke very directly. If all the righteous people in the world want to kill me for this, what will your Poison God Temple do? Jiang Chen asked. My Poison God Temple has never been a righteous sect. The elder of the Poison God Temple curled his lips and said, That's just the way the world sees things. There's nothing noble or virtuous about it. There's nothing right or wrong about it. In my eyes, and in the eyes of everyone in the Poison God Temple, everything depends on this. The elder of the Poison God Temple waved his fist. Yeah, let's talk with our fists. Jiang Chen nodded. At the same time, outside the Glory World Academy, the young man stared at Jiang Chen with killing intent in his eyes. His face was extremely gloomy, and his eyes were burning with anger. Angry roars came from his mouth. He wanted to kill his way into Xingshi Academy and kill Jiang Chen. However, Glory World Academy's sect-protecting formation had been activated, and it was not something he could break. If you have the guts, then come out and fight! The young man's eyes were about to spit fire. Previously, Jiang Chen had almost stripped him of his title, obliterated his soul, and killed him. If he wasn't strong enough, he would have died long ago. Now, he wanted revenge, but Jiang Chen was hiding in Glory World Academy and not coming out. This was too infuriating. Aren't I just an upper-level true god, and you're a spirit-grade titled god, and you want me to come out and fight with you? Jiang Chen joked. Is my brain not working well, or are you stupid? Then why did you attack just now? The young man shouted. Because I want to kill you. The corners of Jiang Chen's mouth curled up, and he did not avoid the topic of the soul detention forbidden technique at all. He said, I want to take away your title and kill you while I'm at it, that's all. You! Do you dare to come out? The young man's eyes were about to spit fire. However, Jiang Chen stood in front of the central palace with a smile on his face, and he did not come out. Seeing this, the elder of the Poison God Temple, especially when he saw the smile on Jiang Chen's face, couldn't help but mutter. When you were Tian Qin in your previous life, were you also this cheap? Jiang Chen's old face turned red, and he said with a strange expression, I am not cheap, right? As he spoke, a person walked out of the West Hall. This person's blood chi soared into the sky, and there seemed to be a blood dragon circling above his head. When he stepped out, the ground rumbled. Fragments of the great Tao lingered around his body, and divine light decorated his entire body. He was extraordinary, like a god of war who had descended to the world. Mixed aura? Jiang Chen was stunned and asked. I told you to go into seclusion. Why did you come out? It's too noisy outside. I was worried that I would disturb the cultivation of the Glory World Academy disciples. Mixed aura said softly. He cupped his hands at Jiang Chen and said solemnly, Thank you for accepting me into the Glory World Academy. I also promised that I would not forget when I recover to my peak. But you haven't recovered to your peak yet, right? Jiang Chen asked. Yes. Mixed aura nodded, but there was a wisp of thunder roaring in his eyes. Then, he took a step forward. Like a bolt of silver lightning, he appeared outside the mountain gate in the blink of an eye. Jiangchen only left an indifferent but extremely arrogant voice in his ears. Do I need to be at my peak to kill this kind of trash? You! Jiangchen was about to speak when his pupils constricted. He saw that outside the mountain gate, silver lightning drowned everything. Amidst the rumbling, the lightning seemed to be endless. It was silver-white, making it impossible to see what was happening inside the lightning. Vaguely, one could hear the sounds of fighting. As Tianchen, if you encounter a mixed aura at his peak, you'll be beaten up. The poison god hall elder mocked. Is mixed aura really that strong? Jiangchen was in disbelief. When he was a chief god, he could kill a peak god king. Do you think he's strong? The poison god hall elder said in annoyance. Those god kings of his generation suffered a lot at his hands. Hiss. Jiangchen sucked in a breath of cold air, secretly rejoicing that he did not come from the same era as mixed aura. However, even if they came from the same era, Jiangchen was not afraid. After all, he had never fought before. Who knew who was stronger? How can an otherworldly creature like you bully my magnificent 9 clouds? At this moment, Mixed Aura's angry roar came from the silver lightning. The next moment, the youth from the otherworldly world flew out from the lightning. His body cracked, and his soul dimmed. Especially the tidal power on his body, it was almost scattered. What the F***ck? Are they that aggressive? Jiangchen exclaimed. His eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. This was because Mixed Aura was only a peak god at the moment. However, he could suppress a spirit-level tidal god. This combat strength was too powerful. Heavenly Dipper chaoses him. The poison god hall elder sighed. Once upon a time, he was so powerful that the masters of the various forbidden zones and even the purple clouds of the world cherished his talent, and wanted him to take charge of the 9 clouds' divine world. It's a pity that he went to Eternal City. After he came back, the world has changed. Who's talking about the past with you? Jiangchen muttered, his eyes shining. He shouted at Mixed Aura. Let go of that youth! Let me do it! Chapter 971. The young man had already been severely injured and was about to die under Hun Gang's hands. How could Jiangchen sit still? With a strange cry, Jiangchen took a step forward and used shrinking to an inch. In an instant he arrived in front of the young man. What are you doing? Hun Gang stopped and asked with a puzzled expression. It's a pity to die like this. Jiangchen grinned and formed the seal with both hands. Black runes erupted and pierced into the young man's soul like a black palm. Roar! The young man roared, but he was suppressed by Hun Gang and couldn't resist at all. Just like that, he watched as his tidal power was taken away and absorbed into Jiangchen's body. You! Soul-capturing forbidden technique? Hun Gang's expression froze as he said in a deep voice. This technique has long been banned. It's too cruel. If we don't act cruel now, they will be the ones to be cruel in the future. Jiangchen said. Which one do you choose? Hun Gang frowned. After pondering for a while, he slapped the young man to death and said, Then let's be cruel. Jiangchen chuckled and then handed the spirit-level tidal power to Hun Gang. He instructed, Go back to the West Hall and continue cultivating. Give this to the first person to break through to the tidal god realm. Aren't you afraid that you won't be able to survive the wrath of heaven? Hun Gang's tidal power subordinate asked worriedly. It's not like I haven't survived it. Jiangchen curled his lips. I really don't care about the wrath of heaven. Buzz. However, just as he finished speaking, a tribulation cloud appeared above Jiangchen's head. The tribulation cloud was dark brown, and the phantom of a war general appeared. With a bang, lightning gathered on the war general's phantom, causing it to become more and more solid, as if it was a real creature. This? I'll leave first. Hun Gang's expression changed drastically. He didn't want to be implicated in this wrath of heaven. As for Jiangchen, He was stunned as he stared blankly at the tribulation cloud above his head. After a few breaths, he cursed. Divine General Hui Tian? Even the elders of the Poison God Temple were dumbfounded. He also did not expect that the heavenly retribution that Jiang Chen attracted after using the soul-capturing forbidden technique was actually Divine General Hui Tian. One had to understand that this type of heavenly tribulation was something no one had ever been able to overcome. There were no exceptions. This was one of the 10 deadly heavenly tribulations known to the world. Kid, I told you the heavenly wrath is different from before. Are you comfortable now? The Poison God Temple's elder joked. Don't worry, if you can leave behind a corpse, I will definitely find a good place to bury you. This is going to be terrible. Jiang Chen also let out a long sigh. He never thought that he would attract the wrath of God General Hui Tian. There were records that in ancient times, a peerless expert had died under the heavenly wrath of Heavenly General Hui Tian. This gray divine general phantom was like the arbiter of the heavens. The saber in his hand flashed with a sharp light that stretched for thousands of miles. The void cracked and the runes of the great Tao were annihilated around this divine general. Jiang Chen's hair stood on end. The divine power in his body instantly erupted. The Emperor's Vine and the immortal bird Tao soul came out together. Even the myriad transformations heavenly lamp floated above his head. Jiang Chen had made all the preparations. As for whether he could survive the heavenly tribulation, that was up to fate. However, in the next moment, Jiang Chen was dumbfounded. The Poison God Temple's elder was shocked. Han Gang, who had yet to return to the West Hall, was also dumbfounded. 3 wisps of chaotic aura appeared above Jiang Chen's head. One turned into 3 flowers. As the green flowers bloomed, they swallowed and spat out chaotic radiance. The chaotic radiance flowed in reverse and turned into 3 vortexes. Before Divine General Hui Tian could slash down with his saber, the entire tribulation cloud was swallowed by these 3 vortexes. This chaotic aura! Divine General Hui Tian is gone just like that. The 3 of them were dumbfounded. Divine General Hui Tian, who was known as one of the 10 deadly heavenly retributions, was gone just like that. Moreover, it was swallowed. Most importantly, the 3 wisps of chaotic aura did not seem to be full. The chaotic radiance spun in the air, still swallowing the remaining power of heavenly retribution. After a dozen breaths, the chaotic aura returned to Jiang Chen's body. Heaven and earth returned to normal as if nothing had happened. I don't think you need to find a place for me to be buried. Jiang Chen's expression was strange. Then, he smiled mockingly at the Poison God Temple's elder. Where did your primal chaos energy come from? The Poison God Temple's elder's eyes sparkled as he enviously asked. One had to know that the power of primal chaos was extremely rare. It was even harder for people to control it. Even the most famous and powerful beings in history had never controlled the power of primal chaos. But now, this power was controlled by Jiang Chen, a true immortal realm cultivator. Envious? I'm not telling you, Jiang Chen said mockingly. Looks like I don't have to worry about heavenly retribution in the future. You don't have to worry about heavenly retribution, but you do have to worry about the chaotic aura in your body. Han Kong frowned and said in a low voice. Rumor has it that every wisp of chaotic aura is a living being. They devour everything in the world until they devour enough energy to transform into living beings. The Poison God Temple's elder nodded. I've heard of this rumor too. It shouldn't be false, right? Don't scare me. Jiang Chen's expression stiffened. If the rumor was true, didn't that mean he was raising 3 chaotic beings in his body? If these 3 beings were to be born in the future, would it be good or bad for his main body? In fact, Jiang Chen suspected that when the 3 chaotic beings were born, even his main body would be devoured. But there's no way to prove it. Maybe it's just a rumor, Han Kong said. It's better to believe it than not, the Poison God Temple's elder reminded. After all, these 3 wisps of chaotic aura are in your body now. You're making me nervous. Jiang Chen's face darkened. He waved his hand and said, Stop talking, stop talking. Buzz. As soon as he said that, rumbling sounds came from Jiang Chen's body. Then, the symbols of the Great Doctrine appeared. They looked like chains of the Divine Doctrine, and they wound around Jiang Chen's body. There were runes on the chains that seemed to contain the essence of the Great Tao. They continuously entered Jiang Chen's body. At the same time, an auspicious light fell from the sky and enveloped Jiang Chen. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth swarmed toward Jiang Chen and entered his body. In just a dozen breaths' time, Jiang Chen's cultivation jumped from upper true God to lower heavenly God. Moreover, the divine energy in his body was abundant, and the divine Tao fragments were pure. He was only a step away from becoming an upper heavenly God. How did you suddenly break through? The Poison God Temple's elder was dumbfounded. There were no signs at all. They seem to be feeding me, Jiang Chen said in a low voice. The heavenly wrath I absorbed just now turned into divine Tao energy. Feeding you? That means the 3 wisps of chaotic aura do indeed have spirits. The Poison God Temple's elder and Hong Kong exclaimed in shock. Jiang Chen's hair stood on end and his scalp was about to explode. Chapter 972. Previously, they were still talking about the rumors about the chaos creatures, but in the blink of an eye, Jiang Chen was being fed back by 3 wisps of chaos qi. Jiang Chen wouldn't believe that these 3 wisps of chaos qi didn't have their own consciousness. At this moment, the Poison God Hall Elder and Chaos Gang turned pale. They looked at Jiang Chen as though they were looking at a monster. They thought of an even more terrifying rumor. There was once a great sage who predicted that in a certain era in the future, the chaos creatures would be born and wash the world with blood. And now, the 3 wisps of chaos qi in Jiang Chen's body combined with the great sage's deduction. It can't be true, right? The Poison God Hall Elder exclaimed, his heart trembling. Chaos Gang's expression wasn't any better. He stared at Jiang Chen with a fierce glint in his eyes. Jiang Chen's scalp tingled from being stared at. He waved his hands and said, "You guys, don't look at me like that. I'm fine. Those 3 wisps of chaos qi, what's the situation now?" The Poison God Hall Elder asked. Hearing this, Jiang Chen carefully sensed the 3 wisps of chaos qi in his body and found that they were very calm. The 3 wisps of chaos qi were like 3 azure dragons that coiled above his soul. Around them, azure lotuses bloomed, looking sacred and flawless. Moreover, Jiang Chen didn't sense any clear consciousness from the 3 wisps of chaos qi. Perhaps they were overthinking. Let's observe for a while. If there's really a problem, we have to resolve it as soon as possible, the Poison God Hall Elder said with a grave expression. Chaos is not only the beginning of all things, but also the end of all things. There was a prophecy that the birth of the chaos creatures means that the heavens will be destroyed and return to chaos. Therefore, this matter is of great importance. If there's anything, you can't hide it from us, Chaos Gang said solemnly. How would I dare to hide it? I'm so guilty that I want to die, Jiang Chen said snappily. With that said, Jiang Chen formed seals with both hands and cast a series of restrictions and seals, sealing the 3 wisps of chaos qi in his body. He was indeed panicking. If something were to happen to the 3 strands of chaotic qi, the consequences would be unimaginable. Putting aside what kind of disaster it would bring to this world, just for himself, once the 3 strands of chaotic aura exploded, it was very likely that he would suffer a backlash. Jiang Chen even suspected that the 3 strands of chaotic aura were feeding him as if they were feeding him. Wait until they are white and plump, and then eat them? As soon as he thought of this, Jiang Chen felt uneasy. He deployed more seals one after another. They surrounded the 3 wisps of chaotic energy inside and out. We'll observe them for a while. If there's really a big problem, I'll kill them myself, Jiang Chen said in a deep voice. I hope nothing bad happens. The elder of the Poison God Temple sighed. In the end, Hong Kong returned to the West Hall and the elders of the Poison God Hall returned to their palaces to instruct their disciples. Jiang Chen didn't enter the West Palace. He just sat at the entrance of the Central Palace with a frown. He was still thinking about the 3 strands of chaotic chi. Don't use the soul-capturing forbidden technique anymore. It's against the laws of nature. Not long after, the descendant of the clear sky god emperor arrived. He must have seen the previous battle. At this moment, his expression was calm, but there was a hint of warning in his words. In fact, Jiang Chun realized that the descendant of the clear sky god emperor actually had a hint of killing intent in his eyes. Jiang Chen's heart tightened. He stared at the descendant of the clear sky god emperor and asked, "If I use the soul-capturing forbidden technique again, will you kill me? The clear sky clan upholds the righteousness of heaven and earth. If you insist on doing something against the laws of nature, then don't blame me for being impolite." The descendant of the clear sky god emperor was very serious. Hearing this, Jiangchen sneered and said softly, "I have to admit that the clear sky god emperor did make a great contribution to the 9 heavens god realm back then. But just based on this, the clear sky god emperor's clan can control the life and death of others? Besides, there's no such thing as good or evil in this world." Hearing this, the descendant of the clear sky god emperor's expression gradually darkened. He stared at Jiangchen, and the aura on his body rose steadily. At this moment, Jiangchen had an illusion that this person was really going to attack. "Now I'm the same as you, a teacher of the Glory World Academy. And there are rules in the world's edge. You can't bully the weak." Jiangchen narrowed his eyes and was fearless. He knew very well how strong the world's edge was. It was enough to intimidate the clan of the clear sky god emperor. Indeed, after hearing Jiangchen's words, the descendant of the clear sky god emperor seemed to sober up. The aura on his body calmed down, and the killing intent in his eyes disappeared. "The soul-capturing forbidden technique is against the laws of nature. Don't use it again," the descendant of the clear sky god emperor said coldly. "This is the last time I'm warning you." "Warning?" Jiangchen raised his eyebrows, stood up directly, and looked at the person. His voice was as cold as the cold wind. "You want to kill me, then this is not a warning, but a threat. And I hate being threatened the most. So what if I'm threatening you? If the world's edge hadn't appeared, you would have been a dead man." The descendant of the clear sky god emperor narrowed his eyes, and killing intent appeared in the depths of his eyes again. This irritated Jiangchen, and he was even angrier. "Your ancestor hasn't appeared yet, but you, a descendant, are so nosy. Moreover, so what if you use the soul-capturing forbidden technique? Has the soul-capturing forbidden technique been used on the living beings of the 9 heavens god realm? Even if it's a forbidden technique, you have to see who it's used on." The words of the descendant of the clear sky god emperor were clearly unreasonable. Remember. In the end, the descendant of the clear sky god emperor left. "Who do you think you are? Aren't you just the descendant of the clear sky god emperor?" Jiangchen cursed in his heart. He slowly sat down, and then looked up at the sky. After a few breaths, Jiangchen grinned and gave a thumbs up to the group of living beings in the outside world again. "This little bastard! He's too arrogant. Not only did he kill the genius of the Great Thousand World, but he also took away his title power. His methods are too cruel. This person must be killed. Otherwise, the reputation of the Great Thousand World will be lost." The group of living beings in the outside world was furious. The Red Lotus Venerable's face was also dark. If the southern wall had not collapsed, he would have killed Jiangchen, this ant. "After a few days, when the southern wall's power is weakened, send an Earth-rank titled deity down there." "I don't believe that a mere academy can have an Earth-rank titled deity," the Red Lotus Venerable said coldly. At the same time, in Yongzhou of the 9 heavens god realm, since the death of the 2 emperors of the netherworld, the group of living beings in the netherworld had restrained themselves a lot and rarely left Yongzhou. However, on this day, all the living beings in the netherworld who came to the world of the living gathered in Yongzhou. All of them faced the boundary between the netherworld and the netherworld, kneeling on the ground and chanting incomprehensible Sanskrit words as if they were welcoming the arrival of some living being. Chapter 973. Previously, a powerful cultivator from the Yang realm had killed the two emperors of the netherworld. Since then, the living beings of the netherworld had been much more restrained. They lived in Yongzhou and did not leave their homes. The living beings of the Yang realm thought that the netherworld would stop for a while. They did not expect that the netherworld would make a move again in less than a month. At this moment, many living beings of the netherworld were kneeling on the ground, facing the boundary between Yin and Yang. They were kowtowing and chanting ancient scriptures. At the boundary between Yin and Yang, cracks appeared, and an ancient altar could be vaguely seen. The altar was filled with a primordial aura. The great Tao turned into an auspicious aura and descended, enveloping the entire altar. A young man stood on the altar. His body was covered in colorful light, and his hair was bright as if there were stars hanging on his hair. He was handsome, and his face was fair. His eyes were very beautiful, as if they could seduce one's soul. As the chanting became louder and louder, the light on the altar stacked and shot into the sky. Then, a gap appeared at the boundary between Yin and Yang. The next moment, he took a step forward. The auspicious aura on his body was like a furnace, protecting him. He passed through the boundary between Yin and Yang, bringing with him a seven-colored radiance, and finally arrived in Yongzhou. At this moment, the living beings in Yongzhou cheered excitedly. Their eyes were filled with reverence. However, if one looked closely, this young man's cultivation was not very high. He was only a titled deity. Compared to the previous two emperors, he was indeed a little weak. However, when the previous two emperors of the netherworld descended, they did not receive such treatment. "Welcome, Saint of the Flowing Cloud! Welcome, Saint of the Flowing Cloud!" Loud cheers could be heard. Everyone bowed in worship. Their voices were so loud that it shook the sky. Even the creatures in the outside world were alarmed. All of their gazes landed on Yongzhou and the Flowing Cloud's saint child. "This person is very powerful. His talent is unparalleled." Venerable Red Lotus and the others stared. With their cultivation, they could see through the saint of the Flowing Cloud's foundation at a glance. In their eyes, what they saw was not a young man, but a prodigy with the aura of an emperor. It was even to the extent that some people saw endless light from this youth. It was as if he wanted to break through the shackles of the Grand Tao and shatter the shackles of the void. "I didn't expect there to be such a creature in the burial ground," Venerable Red Lotus said in a low voice. "It seems that the burial ground is much stronger than we thought. So what if this person is extraordinarily gifted? He is merely a titled deity. If we were to descend, we would be able to suppress him with a raise of our hand." Someone was extremely displeased. As he spoke, he even glanced in the direction of the Flourishing Age Academy. "No matter how strong they are, it's useless. In the end, this battle will be a battle between the top experts. Young people like them won't even be able to protect themselves." "That's right." At the same time, in Yongzhou, the Sage of Flowing Clouds slowly landed in the ancient city. He had a smile that was like a spring breeze on his face. He waved at everyone and said softly, "Most of you are of the same generation as me. There is no need to call me saint. Just call me Jiluyan." "Holy Son, you can't do that. You are a saint, how can you neglect your etiquette? Deluyun is the holy land of the netherworld, and you are the holy son of Deluyun. You deserve such treatment." Many people spoke one after another. They knelt on the ground and refused to get up. This made Jiluyun feel rather helpless. He could only put on a serious expression and say, "No need for formalities." After saying this, the group of people slowly stood up. However, their expressions and eyes were still filled with reverence. "Holy Son Luyun, the Yang realm has gone too far. They killed the two emperors of the netherworld." Someone said in a deep voice, "Did the netherworld only send you here for this matter?" When Jiluyun heard this, he nodded with a smile and said, "I came to the Yang realm to take a look at the scenery here." At the same time, Jiluyun did not finish his sentence. Instead, he raised his head and looked into the sky. An unknown smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "What does this kid mean? Is he declaring war on us?" This ant is the same as that brat from the Flourishing Age Academy. How disgusting! Venerable Red Lotus and the others were furious. They could feel that Ji Liuyun's smile was filled with contempt and provocation. Who were they? They were the top experts of the upper-class world. They were high and mighty. Usually, no one dared to speak loudly to them, let alone be looked down upon and provoked. And now, a titled god actually dared to do this. If it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't enter the 9 heavens divine realm now, this group of people would have already made their move. Something strange. I can't see his title level clearly. At this moment, Venerable Red Lotus's expression froze as he stared at Ji Liyun in shock. With his cultivation, how many things in this world could escape his eyes? Seeing through illusions and even observing the past, present, and future was not a problem. But now, he couldn't see Ji Liyun's title level clearly. This made him seriously suspect that Ji Liyun's title level was most likely Earth level. As for why it wasn't Heaven level, Venerable Red Lotus didn't think about it at all. One had to know that even in the glorious upper-class world, from ancient times until now, there hadn't been many Heaven-level titles. First, send a Spirit-level junior to investigate his situation. Venerable Red Lotus said. We have to pay attention to this kid. He's just an ant. Is there a need to pay attention to him? When we arrive at the burial ground, no matter how talented he is, he will be annihilated, someone said in a deep voice. However, everyone still did as they were told, and used their divine thoughts to inform the disciples who had entered the 9 heavens divine realm. In just half a day, a person arrived in Yongzhou. He pushed his way through and finally arrived in front of the first ancient city in Yongzhou, Yongzhou City. Call out the strongest person here. This person had pushed his way through and was extremely powerful. Now that he was in front of the ancient city, his tone was even more arrogant. However, in the next moment, his expression froze. A mysterious light shot out from the ancient city, carrying with it a 7-colored radiance. There were even fragments of the great path floating in the radiance. Before this person could react, the mysterious light broke through the power of his title. Then, the mysterious light exploded, and the person collapsed along with it. He died instantly. Looks like it's not wrong. It's an Earth-level titled god. Venerable Red Lotus stood outside the world and saw everything. Then, he sneered and asked, Among the disciples who entered the burial ground this time, are there any top Earth-level titled gods? Venerable Red Lotus, there are 3. One is going to Yongzhou, one is going to Xingshi Academy, and one is going to Linlang Academy. Venerable Red Lotus's eyes flashed with a cold light and said in a deep voice, It's time to let this group of ignorant creatures know the power of the upper-class world. That's right. The 3 Earth-level titled gods in the upper-class world are extremely powerful. You can even fight against the strong people of the older generation. This time, let's see how the burial ground deals with them. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.